Chapter 1005. Wendingland sat down, her posture elegant and dignified. Then she asked, "Oh, what I like to drink?" "How can I not know?" Yin Fu was all smiles. "Don't worry, the residence has prepared it." Yin Fu obviously didn't remember what kind of tea Wendingland liked to drink, but for the housekeeper of Yin Prefecture, this was certainly not a problem. Jiang Wang smiled and didn't make any unnecessary movements, indicating that he didn't understand the undercurrent between the two's words. Wendingland obviously knew the answer, but she didn't pursue it. She just lightly pointed it out and let it go. Then she said, "Everyone has sat down. Why are you the only one standing?" "Haha, that's true." Yin Fu laughed a lot today. As for whether or not he was truly happy, it didn't matter. At this moment, he was standing alone. Jiang Wang and Wendingland were sitting on opposite sides, facing each other. Yin Fu looked at the empty seat next to Jiang Wang, then looked at the empty seat next to Wendingland. In the end, he didn't go to either side and went to sit at the head of the table. Looking at both sides, he laughed again. "Today, I'm really happy." Yin Fu was actually very elegant when he laughed, but now his aura was suppressed and his smile was distorted. Jiang Wang didn't know what was so important about him, and he didn't want to know. Since it didn't concern him, he didn't care. He drank the tea one sip at a time. But the tree wants to be quiet, but the wind won't stop. Yin Fu laughed for a while, but no one responded. Then he glanced at Jiang Wang and pretended to say unintentionally, "Brother Jiang, what do you think?" "The tea is very good," Jiang Wang responded enthusiastically. Although Jiang Wang's response was so incoherent, Yin Fu actually continued, "Brother Jiang, so you also know about the tea ceremony. Then you should talk more with Miss One. Mr. One is a tea ceremony expert. Miss One has been influenced by him since she was young. Her tea ceremony attainments are extraordinary." He almost pressed Jiang Wang's neck and forced him to chat with Wendingland to ease the atmosphere. Wendingland was very polite. She didn't neglect Jiang Wang because he wasn't of noble birth. She smiled and said, "Father has an orchid heart court in the suburbs. It doesn't receive guests, so not many people know about it. But there are many good teas inside. If Wendingland gave Yin Fu enough face. Jiang Wang could only hide his intention by drinking tea. "When I have time, I will." Seeing that the atmosphere seemed to have eased, Yin Fu pretended to say unintentionally, "Ting Lan, why didn't you tell me in advance that you were coming this time? You made me unprepared. In a hurry, I was afraid that I would be rude." "Ha!" "Oh." Ting Lan was rude. Wendingland looked at him and said, "I should have sent an invitation card in advance when I came to the Yin Prefecture." That's not what I meant." "Then what did young Master Yin mean?" Yin Fu looked at Jiang Wang for help. Well, Jiang Wang was looking down at the tea leaves and didn't notice. The green tea leaves were wantonly in the water, and it was very beautiful. It was really beautiful. He looked at one leaf, then another, but didn't raise his head. He couldn't count on this guy, who said that Jiang Qingyang was righteous. That was very disloyal. Yin Fu finally saw the reality. He could only rely on himself to smooth things over. "What I mean is that you're used to being careful with what you eat and wear. I'm afraid that you won't be able to do as you wish outside. If I had known that you would come today, I would have prepared a new house in advance and decorated it according to the Wen Mansion so that you wouldn't feel uncomfortable. How could I bear to build a new house especially for this welcome?" If it were someone else who said this, they would probably just say it to make it sound nice. But the person who said this was Yin Fu. He would definitely do it. Wendingland was angry in her heart, but her hatred dissipated a little. She said softly, "You're right. I'm not that spoiled." "Of course you're not spoiled." Yin Fu was in a good state. It was as if he was helped by God. "I'm worried about you." Jiang Wang almost spat out a mouthful of tea. Fortunately, he was strong enough to force it down. In front of Jiang Wang, Wendingland was a little embarrassed. She said angrily, "I don't know who you learned this from. You grew up with women and are used to fooling around." Yin Fu glanced at Jiang Wang, intentionally or otherwise. He didn't say anything else. Everything was clear without words. Jiang Wang was speechless, truly shameless. This rich dog. Fortunately, Wendingland didn't believe him. She took a sip of tea and said, "I think Prince Jiang is an honest person. He's not like you guys. Yin Fu obviously wasn't stupid enough to ask who we were. Whether it was Su Xiangxian, Gao Zhe, or the other young masters in Linzi, he didn't have a good impression of them. They were all heads of the brothels. He, Yin Fu, was a maverick. Therefore, he smiled calmly. The lotus root grows out of the mud without being stained. The spring breeze passes through the stagnant water with its fragrance. It still depends on one's cultivation. Wendingland's words had a hidden meaning. It's a pity that one's cultivation is known by everyone. After all, there's no telling what's in a person's heart. She then smiled. Prince Jiang, on the other hand, has a good reputation. Jiang Wang couldn't help but admit that Yin Fu and Wendingland were a perfect match in terms of family background, bearing, grace, and talent. But standing between the two of them who were in conflict for some unknown reason, that feeling of uneasiness was particularly strong. I don't dare to talk about reputation. I'm just doing my part as a person. Jiang Wang was extremely low-key. He quickly glanced at Yin Fu and said with his eyes, "I'd better leave." Yin Fu returned a look that said, "Don't even think about it. Doing your part as a person?" Prince Jiang said it well. Wendingland smiled and asked, "Right before I came in, what were you guys talking about?" "I was just about to tell you about it." Yin Fu was probably afraid that Jiang Wang would leak the fact that he had forced him to stay behind as a cover. He hurriedly continued, "This brother Jiang of mine wants to participate in the Yellow River meeting and win glory for the country. I'm going to help write a post and submit it." Jiang Wang sighed softly in his heart. This rich man was too smart for his own good. Originally, there wasn't much to talk about, but after he rushed to answer, it seemed like they really talked about something that Wendingland couldn't hear about. Sure enough, Wendingland's slight smile disappeared quietly. But on the surface, she didn't lose her manners. "This matter isn't difficult for you. Prince Jiang doesn't lack character or talent. I'll also help to watch over it. The main thing is that Jiang Qingyang is really capable. Otherwise, it wouldn't be easy." Yin Fu also felt mentally tired. Thinking that he would be stabbed regardless of whether he raised or retracted his head, he asked cautiously, "Today, you seem to be in a bad mood?" "It's not that bad," Wendingland said softly. Suddenly, she changed the topic, "But during this period of time, there have been some rumors that have fallen into my ears. I have no choice but to listen." Yin Fu's smile was a little difficult to maintain. "Oh, what is it?" Jiang Wang smelled the dangerous scent of the dagger being revealed. He immediately stood up. Can I leave for a while?" Wendingland smiled gently. Her smile was gentle and beautiful. "Prince Jiang, Yin Fu went overseas to look for you. I don't think you need to leave. Please take a seat." She called out softly. It was as if she was the master of this place and had control over the entire situation. Jiang Wang sat down obediently. Yin Fu didn't say a word. At this moment, the two dignified to Qimin were Tianjiao. Their imposing manner was completely suppressed, and they were suppressed like two stupid quails. Chapter 1006. Ahem, Jiang Wang coughed softly. "Miss Wen is right. I do have some friendship with Brother Yin. Let me say something fair." Wendingland interrupted him gently. Usually, the words that follow after this sentence are not fair. Jiang Wang was defeated. "That's too much." Yin Fu stood up angrily and rolled up his sleeves. It looked like he was going to go out and seek revenge on the spot. "Who's gossiping in your ear? Tell me, I'll definitely teach those people a lesson." Wendingland glanced at him. "Sit down and talk." Yin Fu sat down obediently. She then asked, "Why don't you ask what they're saying? What else can they say?" Yin Fu seemed to be burning with anger and was particularly indignant. "They're just jealous of your beauty, dignified, decent, elegant, and virtuous. Ting Lan, don't take it to heart. An outstanding girl like you is the one that attracts the jealousy of gossipy women." Wendingland didn't buy it at this moment. She only said, "Oh, I didn't hear what you said. Some people only said that you stole someone's love, bullied others, and shameless." She still had a gentle smile on her face. However, Yin Fu couldn't be vague anymore. Jiang Wang sat to the side, his body stiff. He knew the cause and effect of Yin Fu's marriage. The Yin family only got married to Wen Yinyu after the marriage with the Ryu family was annulled. Yin Fu had no choice in the whole matter. However, no one could go against their conscience and say that the girl from the Ryu family, Yu Hu Chong, wasn't hurt. She was the most innocent and the one who was hurt the most. It was normal for someone to stand up for Yu Hu Chong. Didn't her close friend, Jiang Wuyo, chase after Yin Fu and beat him up a few times? However, when some of these words fell into Wendinglin's ears, they obviously didn't sound good. Yin Fu said, "Ting Lan about this." Wendinglin chuckled as if she didn't hear anything. Then, she looked at Yin Fu and asked, "Young Master Yin, I don't deny that I have feelings for you. There's nothing to be ashamed of liking someone. But tell me, did I force you to ask for my hand in marriage?" There was no grievance in her gentle eyes. But for some reason, that gentle smile of hers made his heart ache. Yes, Yu Hu Chong was very pitiful. But in this marriage, what wrong did Wendinglin do? The marriage between the former Prime Minister Yin Ping and the Minister of the Imperial Court, Wen Yinyu, was a major event that everyone paid attention to. Yin Fu didn't have the power to decide on this matter. He could only carry out the interests of the Yin family. On the other hand, Wen Tinglan was supposed to be lucky because she was able to marry the man she loved. But gossip was like a knife, and gossip was like an awl. It cut one's body and pierced one's heart. It was painful and painful. Why couldn't Jiang Wang persuade her? Because he couldn't say that gossip was nothing. Gossip was hurtful, but it wasn't easy to deal with it. He persuaded the palace master of Huaying Palace, Jiang Wuyo, overseas, but he couldn't stop everyone's mouths. Ting Lan, Yin Fu didn't avoid it anymore. He looked at Wendinglin seriously and said, "I was the one who went to the Wen family to ask for your hand in marriage. I was also the one who went to the Ryu family to cancel marriage. I'll give you an explanation for this." Wendinglin looked away and stood up. She bowed to Jiang Wang and said, "Prince Jiang, Ting Lan was rude today. I made a fool of myself. I'll apologize to you another day." "I don't dare to say that." Jiang Wang hurriedly stood up. Wendinglin didn't say anything else. She didn't look at Yin Fu either. She turned around and left. Yin Fu was still sitting at the head of the table. He didn't move at all. Jiang Wang sighed and asked, "Are you okay?" Yin Fu raised his hand and said, "I'm fine. What are you going to do?" Jiang Wang asked, "I'll write an invitation for you right away. Don't worry, there won't be a problem with the Yellow River meeting." Yin Fu didn't answer the question. Okay." Jiang Wang was a little worried, but he could only say so. Yin Fu calmed himself down. He pushed the teacup aside, took out a brush and paper, and spread them on the table next to him. The paper was top-quality snow reflecting paper. It was named for its ability to reflect snow and sea fog. The brush was also glowing. When he started writing, his movements were as smooth as moving clouds and flowing water. It was comfortable and natural. Although he was obviously worried about something, his bearing was still impeccable. After he finished writing, he knocked on the table with his finger. A servant walked in. Yin Fu handed the paper over and ordered, "Give it to Lord Wu. He knows what to do." The servant took the paper, folded it carefully, and left without saying a word. Yin Fu supported his forehead with his hand. He was in a daze. After dealing with the matter he had promised Jiang Wang, he sank back into his melancholy. Jiang Wang sat next to him, silently accompanying him. He really couldn't think of a good way to deal with such a situation. After some time, Yin Fu seemed to have thought it through. He looked up and saw Jiang Wang. He still had that gentle look on his face as he asked, "Why don't you accompany me to Fufeng County?" Before Jiang Wang could say anything, he said, "I don't dare to go alone." He was the legitimate son of the Yin clan in Beijing. He was the grandson of the former Prime Minister Yin Ping. What was there to be afraid of in Qi? What could make someone like Yin Fu say, "I don't dare" was definitely not power or money. In Fufeng County, there was someone he felt guilty about. Jiang Wang only said, "Let's go." It was a coincidence. At this time, he naturally had to accompany him. Moreover, on this trip, the one who was really difficult to face was Yin Fu himself. No matter how good his relationship with Yin Fu was, he could only be a spectator in this matter. From Linzi to Fufeng County in the west of the empire, they had to cross several counties. This time, Jiang Wang didn't have time to experience the luxurious carriage of the Yin family. This was because Yin Fu directly flew over with him. Ji Chuan, Qiu Yang, Yin Xiao, Baolong, Changming, and Fufeng directly flew over the sky of Qi, drawing a straight line. With Jiang Wang's current status, he could fly directly to most places in Qi without being stopped. Not to mention Yin Fu's background. Fufeng County was connected to Donglai to the north, Qingtu to the south, and Pingxi to the west. It was a relatively wealthy county. Although the Ryu family had declined in Qi, there was no doubt that they were a prominent family in the area. Yin Fu didn't directly visit them. Now that the Yin family's engagement with the Ryu family had been canceled, it would be rude to visit them rashly. Although Yin Fu was eager to settle this matter as soon as possible, he still obediently handed in a letter of invitation and asked for the host's permission. He and Jiang Wang randomly found a restaurant and sat down to wait for news. Yin Fu didn't stop talking along the way. He talked about the legends of Baolong County and the history of Fufeng County. He also commented on the governance of the previous Fufeng County governors. However, when they arrived at Fufeng County, he quieted down. Jiang Wang could feel his nervousness, but there was nothing he could do. He could only drink with him. To their surprise, the head of the Ryu family came to greet them personally. The two of them were drinking cup after cup when suddenly a few people entered the restaurant and negotiated with the owner. After a while, all the other customers in the restaurant had left. Then, a few teams of armed guards began to set up defenses outside the restaurant, guarding all the key points. It was as if a noble was going on an inspection tour. When a middle-aged man who still looked handsome walked into the restaurant, Yin Fu quickly stood up to greet him. Jiang Wang then realized that this man was the head of the Ryu family, Yu Yongqi. Chapter 1007. No matter how much the Ryu clan had declined, Yu Yongqi was the head of the Ryu family, the current Xian Huaibua. He personally came to the restaurant to welcome Yin Fu. This was no longer the most courteous reception. It was beyond the scope of courteous reception. It was out of line. Yin Fu did not act arrogantly because of the Yin family's power. On the contrary, when he saw Yu Yongqi from afar, he quickly stood up and walked forward to greet him. Lu Bofu, you are too kind. As Yin Fu's friend, Jiang Wang naturally stood up and refused to sit down. Yu Yongqi laughed and stretched out his hand from afar. He strode forward and grabbed Yin Fu's hand firmly. Nephew, what brings you here today? It was as if he had completely forgotten the embarrassment when Yin Fu personally came to cancel the engagement. While holding Yin Fu's hand affectionately, he turned his head and looked at Jiang Wang. This is... Yin Fu took the opportunity to pull his hand out and introduced, this is my good friend, Jiang Wang. In today's Qi, there was no need for any introduction. The two words Jiang Wang were enough. Jiang Wang was not arrogant. He took the initiative to greet him. Greetings, Xian Huaibua. Oh, it's Jiang Qingyang. It's really better to meet you in person than to hear about you. Yu Yongqi's expression was both surprised and happy. You are so elegant and charming. Jiang Wang and Yin Fu secretly looked at each other. It seemed that after Yin Fu personally canceled the engagement, Yu Yongqi's family was having a hard time. Yu Yongqi's arrival, his subordinates clearing the road in advance, and the guards patrolling the street, was frightening. But what kind of person would need such extravagant extravagance to keep up appearances? For example, Chu Liang from Chongxian. Even if he was alone, who would dare to ignore him wherever he went? Moreover, Yu Yongqi had made such a big fuss just to welcome a junior like Yin Fu. No matter how powerful the Yin family was, Yin Fu was only a junior. Yu Yongqi's welcome wouldn't make Yin Fu feel respected. Instead, it would make him feel pressured, a heavy moral pressure. Look at what you've done to us. I, Xian Huaibua, have to curry favor with others like this. Jiang Wang couldn't help but wonder if this was Yu Yongqi's goal. It's just a small name, not worth mentioning. Jiang Wang wasn't good at dealing with this kind of situation, but he thought that Yin Fu would be more difficult to deal with. Therefore, he took the initiative to say, Uncle, you're too grand. Yin Fu and I came here with Qingyi this time, just for a private visit. It's not a big deal. Yes, Yin Fu added. If I knew that Lu Bofu would come out to welcome me personally, I wouldn't have dared to send a visiting card. Jiang Wang and Yin Fu should have already made things very clear. However, Yu Young-ki didn't seem to understand at all. He smiled very kindly and said, "You're here to see Xiaozhang?" Even his tone was very ambiguous. Jiang Wang's impression of this person suddenly fell to the bottom. She was full of talents. The high-level people Jiang Wang had interacted with were all top-notch figures, even if not all of them were extremely charming. There was no one like Yu Young-ki, who was like a dogskin plaster that couldn't be removed once it stuck on. And he was a dignified duke. At this time, Jiang Wang finally understood why Yin Fu, who was a person who acted like a spring breeze and rain, had personally come to break off the engagement and made the situation ugly. According to Yu Young-ki's behavior, if Yin Fu didn't come in person, how could this engagement be broken off? What especially annoyed Jiang Wang was that Yu Hu-chang and Yin Fu's engagement had been broken off. The two of them could be regarded as having nothing to do with each other. In order to create the illusion that he was still in harmony with the Yin family, Yu Young-ki deliberately spoke in an ambiguous tone. What did he do to his daughter's reputation? Of course, Yin Fu could see clearly what Jiang Wang could see. He was used to being gentle and polite, but at this moment, his expression was very ugly. He could only reluctantly say a few words to maintain his basic demeanor. "Lu Bofu, if you have something to do, go ahead. I'll leave after saying a few words to Lady Lu." It's fine. Uncle isn't busy." Yu Young-ki was still smiling, as if he didn't feel the two young people's resistance. "Let's go. Uncle will lead you back to the residence." At this point, Yin Fu couldn't turn around and leave unless they had a falling out on the spot. The two could only follow behind Yu Young-ki and get into the Ryu family's carriage. In the carriage, Yu Young-ki was also overly enthusiastic. He personally poured wine for Yin Fu and Jiang Wang. "Jiang Wang, this is the first time you've come to my Fufeng County, right? You must try my Fufeng County's specialty food and see my Fufeng County's beautiful scenery." Jiang Wang could only deal with it. "Time is tight this time. I'll definitely come next time." "Oh? Nephew, what are you busy with?" Yu Young-ki seemed to have no sense of propriety as he asked relentlessly. "It's just something related to cultivation. There's nothing much to talk about." Jiang Wang's answer was even more perfunctory. "Oh, cultivation is good. Young people should have great ambitions and shouldn't be complacent with the current situation. You live in hardship and die in peace." Yu Young-ki acted as if he was an experienced person and began to teach. Yin Fu, on the other hand, was still able to maintain his composure and respond from time to time. "Lu Bofu is right. I'll remember this. I'll think about it when I get back. You're worth teaching. I've already said that you, Yin Fu, are a first-class person. Yes, Jiang Wang, you too. Your futures are limitless." Uncle, on the other hand, is getting old. What a bewitching voice. When the carriage finally stopped, Jiang Wang couldn't wait to get out to get some fresh air. This was a small courtyard with its own entrance. It wasn't the Ryu family's residence. There were a few weeping willows in front of the courtyard. Not far away, there was a pond. The environment was quiet. 2 rows of guards followed the carriage and stood solemnly on both sides. Yu Young-ki stood in front of the courtyard and said to Yin Fu, "Nephew, Xiaozhang lives inside. If you have anything to say, you can go in and talk to her. My daughter is stubborn and immature. If there's anything she doesn't know about etiquette, please excuse her." He then said to Jiang Wang in a very natural manner, "Come, nephew Jiang. Uncle will show you the beautiful scenery of Fufeng. Don't disturb them while they talk." In order to create opportunities for Yu Hu-chang and Yin Fu, as an elder, he really put in a lot of effort. "Lu Bofu." Yin Fu, who had been very polite the entire time, interrupted. "I'm here to talk business with Lady Lu. There's nothing shameful about it. There's no need to talk in private. Jiang Wang was invited by me to be a witness. I'm afraid it's not convenient for him to leave with you." Jiang Wang completely ignored Yu Young-ki's greeting. He only stood beside Yin Fu and used his actions to express his position. Yu Young-ki looked at Yin Fu quietly for a while. He could feel the man's determination. How dare he do this? He was on the verge of exploding. But this kind of thing, this kind of embarrassment, had he not suffered enough over the years? Where did the Ryu family get the confidence to support him in teaching Yin Fu a lesson? Yu Young-ki grinned, Someone, go and inform the young miss that an important guest has come to visit. He still spoke in a very affectionate tone. Prime Minister Yin is my uncle. He even hugged me when I was young. He's not my biological uncle, but he's better than a real uncle. My uncle's grandson is here. Our families have been friends for many years. Tell her not to treat him badly. Chapter 1008. A servant knocked on the door and went in to pass on the message. Yu Young-ki smiled and said, "Then I'll take my leave first. I won't disturb you young people." Yin Fu cupped his hands and said, "Thank you, Lu Bo-fu." Yu Young-ki got into his luxurious carriage and left in the afterglow of the setting sun, surrounded by two groups of guards. Just like the afterglow, it looked brilliant, but no one knew how long it could last. Jiang Wang couldn't help but ask, "Xian Huaibo is such a person. How did your family get engaged in this marriage before?" Yin Fu looked at the half-closed door quietly and replied, "The marriage was decided by my grandfather and Lady Lu's grandfather. And Xian Huaibo, he wasn't like this before. Many things remained the same, but people had changed. It was obvious. After a while, the door opened. No one spoke. Behind the door stood a woman with a weak temperament. Her willowy eyebrows were tinged with the color of spring, and there was a little sadness in her limpid eyes. She stood there like a gust of wind, as if she would fly away at any time. Yin Fu opened his mouth, but no words came out. Jiang Wang was silent, and the servants of the Lu residence were even more silent. Even the setting sun in the small courtyard seemed to become bleak. Yin Fu moved forward and finally said, "Lady Lu, the young master Yin is standing there." Yu Hu Chang said, "If you have anything to say, let's talk through the door, so that others won't gossip." Didn't you come here for this?" "Yes." "Okay. Young Master Yin, why did you come here? There are some rumors, I don't know if you've heard. Look, I live here." Yu Hu Chang's gaze shifted to the left and right as he looked at the lonely courtyard. "Every day, all I see and hear is the gentle breeze and the bright moon. How can it compare to the clamor of Lindsay?" Yin Fu lowered his gaze slightly, not daring to look directly at the woman across the door. He said slowly, "Many people said that after that, you were overly sad and wash your face with tears every day." Young Master Yin. Yu Hu Chang's beautiful oval face didn't have much of an expression. "There's nothing to gossip about. You and I have known each other since we were children and have often played together. Since we were young, the adults have always said that we are just joking around. We have been joking around for too long and need time to erase it." She cut off her memories and looked at Yin Fu. "You want to break off the engagement? I have given my permission." "What? I don't even have the right to be sad." She didn't ask if he was worthy or not. She didn't ask if he could. She only asked if he should or shouldn't. It was only when she said this that there was a fluctuation in her voice. "That's not what I meant." Yin Fu's expression was also extremely restrained, and his voice was as calm as possible. "It's just that some voices fell on Ting Lan. She will be Yin Fu's, wife in the future. I have to take her reputation into consideration." "That's right. That's how it should be." Yu Hu Chang's gaze also lowered. "I closed the door and lived my own life. Well, my father said outside. I don't know." The two people across the door only looked at the ground. It was as if the ground hid some secret that could solve the world's problems. The threshold was like a high wall, separating the two people inside and outside. They were on opposite sides of the sky. "I couldn't have done anything to your father." After Yin Fu said this, he realized that he shouldn't have said this. He added, "After all, the Yin and Lu families are old friends." Yu Hu Chang only said, "You also know his situation. If he had listened to me, things wouldn't have turned out this way." Yin Fu sighed softly in his heart and said, "So, I hope you can say something." "Say something?" After all, Yu Hu Chang was smart. After the question left her mouth, she understood. "You want me to say that I have no feelings for you at all? You want me to say that I've never been sad because of this?" She smiled sadly. "Yin Fu, you're so cruel." Yin Fu stood outside the courtyard door, like a silent tree. Only when the wind blew could there be a rustling sound. After a long silence, he said, "Wendingland is my future wife. She didn't do anything wrong. She shouldn't be slandered like this. If I can't resolve this matter for her, I don't have the face to stand in this world. Right now, I only have two methods. First, you speak up and dispel the rumors. Second, you don't say anything. After I return to Lindsay, I'll take a knife and go out. Whoever says a word of gossip, I'll cut him. Whether it's family or enemies, I won't avoid high or low status. Even if people see me as a lunatic like Tian Omping, I'll still do it. Very few people had seen Yin Fu in action, and almost no one had heard of him using force against anyone in public. Although Jiang Wuyo had chased and beaten him for a while in Lindsay, he had only cared about running away and never fought back. But no one doubted Yin Fu's strength. This was the first time Jiang Wang had heard Yin Fu say such fierce words. Even when talking about beheading someone, this gentle and elegant young master was still gentle and restrained. But the determination he revealed was frighteningly firm. Do you know what you're saying? Yu Huchang raised her gaze and looked at Yin Fu, who had never lifted his eyes. For her, you're willing to give up everything? Yin Fu said, Dr. Wen loves his daughter as much as his life. If I protect Wendingland like this, even if my future is ruined, it won't affect the relationship between the Wen family and the Yin family. In the end, you still care about the Yin family the most. I was born in the Yin clan, grew up in the Yin clan, learned from the Yin clan, and learned from the Yin clan. So, Yin Fu finally raised his eyes and looked at Yu Huchang. I will also die in the Yin clan's hands. Yu Huchang looked away. This is my responsibility. I'm the one who affected the harmony between you and your husband. I will deal with it. Young Master Yin, please go back. From the beginning to the end, Yu Yongqi was unwilling to let go of the position of the first wife and firmly tied the Yin family. First, he refused to break off the engagement. After Yin Fu personally came to break off the engagement, he spread the news that Yin Fu and Yu Huchang were in love and couldn't be separated. It was only because of Wen Yinyu's power that they were forced to break off the engagement. No matter what, it wasn't Yu Huchang's fault. However, Yin Fu didn't say anything. He only bowed deeply to Yu Huchang before turning around and leaving. How was it? As soon as Yin Fu and Jiang Wang left, Yu Yongqi ran back impatiently. Yin Fu and Yu, is it still possible? Yu Huchang looked at him sadly and walked inside without saying a word. Yu Yongqi chased after him. Xiaozhang, Xiaozhang. Hey, don't be in such a hurry to leave. Since Yin Fu is a heartless person, we don't have to remember him. What do you think about Jiang Wang and Jiang Qingyang who traveled with him? He is now the most popular young Tianjiao in Qi. He defeated Wang Yiwu in the same realm as him, which is already amazing. He even became famous after the battle overseas and suppressed the cultivators of the same realm in the Fishing Ocean Pavilion. He is a good match, if he can marry into our family. Yu Huchang turned around angrily. For the first time in her life, she shouted at her father, Don't you think I've been humiliated enough? Yu Yongqi froze. He looked at his daughter's tear-streaked face as she turned around sadly. Suddenly, he lost all his strength. I have. What can I do? The smug Yu Yongqi, the Yu Yongqi who swore to rebuild the Ryu clan, the Yu Yongqi who swore that he wouldn't share the sun and moon with the Tian family because of the death of his eldest son, was dead. He died on the day Tian Onping left alive. Chapter 1009. On the way back, Yin Fu let go of his protection and allowed the wind to hit him. Jiang Wang really couldn't say anything and could only accompany him in bumping into the wind. If they did not put up any protection while flying, the wind would be as sharp as knives and heavy as hammers. Talking about it in detail, Yin Fu's marriage could not be said to be right or wrong. The Yin family and the Ryu family did get married first. However, it would be too harsh to say that the Yin family was heartless. After the old man of the Ryu family passed away, it was the Yin family who helped them to stabilize the family. Lu Shintong was killed, and the future of the Fufeng Ryu clan was lost. However, it was still Yin Ping who helped to pressure the Tian family to pay a high price. The Yin family decided to cancel the marriage because Lu Xuanhu could no longer bear the responsibility. Yu Yongqi's family could no longer hold up the family's name and was about to be transferred to another family. This was a very normal thing. The Ryu clan was already on the decline and could no longer match up to the Yin family. How could the Yin family allow their son to marry a girl from the Ryu clan? Xian Huaibua and Yu Yongqi refused to let go of the Yin family. It was probably because they had no other choice. His old father had passed away, and his son, who he was proud of, had passed away. The remaining son and daughter were not enough to hold up the family's name. They were about to lose the family's honor. Looking around, they only had one in-law. Yu Huchang, who was cancelled, was innocent. She did not do anything, and her life took a dive. What did Wendingland do wrong? She was not the one who caused the Ryu family to become like this. As for Yin Fu, how could he decide on his marriage? Unless he said that everything about him had nothing to do with the Yin clan. But how could it be unrelated? Just like he said, he was born in the Yin clan, grew up in the Yin clan, learned from the Yin clan, and obtained from the Yin clan. He could only die at the hands of the Yin clan. If it weren't for the Yin family's power, how could Yin Fu casually send an invitation to the Political Affairs Hall and help Jiang Wang resolve the Yellow River gathering matter so easily? Everyone had their own reasons, and it seemed like no one was wrong. But in the end, many people were hurt. In the biting wind, Jiang Wang could not help but ask, Yin Fu, who do you really love? Ha ha! Yin Fu suddenly laughed. He suddenly increased his speed and crashed into the wind even more fiercely. Only one question was left behind. Does it matter who I love? Except for the whistling of the wind. There was no response. In the training field of the Longevity Palace, a battle had just ended. A young man wrapped in a snow-white fox fur coat looked at his right hand with distinct joints. In the palm of his hand was a shining ball of lightning. Everything changed in it, and it was endlessly changing. He sighed softly and said, Cousin, your lightning seal is really the ultimate truth of heaven and earth. Lei Zhanqian lay on the ground without a care for his image. He panted heavily and said, Isn't it all in your palm? Cough, cough. Jiang Wuqi coughed twice and gently released his right hand. The ball of lightning broke free from its restraints and suddenly struggled. The lightning manifested and became a seal. The ground below was the four directions, and the top was the shape of lightning. It was extremely domineering and majestic. It went straight to Lei Zhanqian and fell into his inner residence. I still need to think about it, Jiang Wuqi said. I know. Lei Zhanqian turned over and sat up. I'll go back and look at the ninth heaven thunder amplification technique. I keep feeling that I haven't figured out something. After saying that, he looked at Jiang Wuqi and complained, I asked you to help me look at it, but you refused. Jiang Wuqi said helplessly, Cousin, public and private matters need to be clarified. How can I look at the Lei family's legacy? The last Emperor Lu forced me to look at the family's ancestral secret, causing the world to rebel. This lesson is not far away. I'm willing to show it to you, even if I can't stop others from thinking. If I don't say, who will know? Jiang Wuqi didn't reply. Forget it, forget it. I can't persuade you. Lei Zhanqian waved his hand and stood up. The Yellow River meeting is about to begin. It's the time for men to become famous. It's a pity that the members of the royal family can't participate. If you can go, who can be your opponent? There should be one or two. Cough, cough. Jiang Wuqi smiled with a pale face. Others needed to make a name for themselves, but a noble like him didn't need to. It's because I can't go. Cousin, you have to work harder. His tone was so natural, but the content of his words was so arrogant. In the whole world, there should only be one or two people who could be his opponent at the same level, and Lei Zhanqian didn't have any objections to this. Don't worry, Wuqi. With your help, I've completely consolidated the three residences and completely controlled the Thunder Source Atlas. Lei Shi has also been pushed to the limit. In addition to the ninth heaven thunder amplification technique, Lei Zhanqian lowered his head and looked at his palms. Lightning flashed on them. My efforts during this period won't lose to anyone. I've already helped you send your name. Jiang Wuqi encouraged him. There won't be any problems with the Political Affairs Hall. You only need to think about how to perform in front of Father. Lei Zhanqian held the lightning and grinned. In the imperial court, In the inner palace, the only one to worry about is Jiang Qingyang. He regained his former confidence and arrogance. The people of the sea are crude. It's easy for them to sweep the coastal waters. I won't lose to him a second time. Cousin, you've personally fought with him. You should know, Jiang Wuqi said. But you and I aren't the only ones in the world who are working hard. At the moment we're talking, there are countless people who are training hard. These words weren't just directed at Jiang Qingyang. Which of the famous families in the world didn't have a trump card? There are many experts among the 9 soldiers. For example, Wang Yiwu broke the historical limit of the reaching heaven state. His path is broad. Although he lost to Jiang Qingyang, after the inner palace, each of his abilities will show. It's hard to say who's stronger and who's weaker. Cousin, don't be careless. I know that Wang Yiwu isn't someone to be trifled with. It's not easy to fight with someone of the same level. After all, he's the army god's disciple. Lei Zhanqian smiled. But the military law is like a mountain. He hasn't even finished his 3-year sentence. Why should I worry? When Jiang Wuqi heard this, he knew that Lei Zhanqian hadn't taken his advice seriously. He had been progressing very quickly during this time. He didn't care about anyone else. With his mindset, he didn't really care about the outcome of the battle between Lei Zhanqian and Jiang Wang. After all, no matter who won, it would be to cheese Tianjiao. It would be good if Lei Zhanqian won, but it would be good if Jiang Wang could show more talent. Of course, this wasn't something he could say in front of Lei Zhanqian. He put his fist to his lips and coughed lightly. Then he smiled and encouraged, Cousin, if you can show off for the Qi this time, I'll arrange a seat for you at Jixia Academy. Lei Zhanqian's eyes lit up. But when he heard Jixia Academy, he couldn't help but think of someone. He couldn't help but ask, you said that 1 or 2 people could be your opponent. Does that include Yung Genzuan? Even someone as arrogant as him couldn't ignore Yung Genzuan's existence. After all, compared to Wang Yiwu, who had been stuck at the reaching heaven state for a long time, Yung Genzuan had stolen the glory of his peers. Jiang Wuqi didn't answer directly. He coughed again and said, if he's really summoned early, you should give up. Chapter 10:10 Tianfu City. Cheng Gengsheng personally supervised and urgently prepared the Taishu Corner Tower, which opened for business today. Jiang Wang naturally had to rush over. Otherwise, Cheng Gengsheng would scold him for at least half a month. Even Tianfu City Lord Lu Zongxiao personally came to congratulate him, so the entire city naturally paid close attention. The onlookers crowded the Taishu Corner Tower, which was covered by a formation, to the point that not even a drop of water could trickle through. The city lord's mansion directly dispatched 4 squads of city guards to maintain order. Next, let us welcome the invincible man of the coastal waters, the #1 man of the Yellow River, the man of Deqi's Qingyang town, the 4th-rank Blue Metal Constable, the 2nd-rank Ocean Guard, and the emissary of the Great Void, Jiang Wang. Cheng Gengsheng's face was flushed, and he was full of energy and passion. I will unveil its mysterious veil for everyone and let everyone see this wonder in the history of cultivation. Those who didn't know would probably think that the Great Void Illusion Realm was built by Jiang Wang. Jiang Wang forced a smile on his face and secretly transmitted his voice. It's not good to be so ostentatious, is it? You'll get beaten up easily. It's fine, Cheng Gengsheng replied through gritted teeth. It's not like you'll beat me up. He suddenly clapped and raised his voice again. Let's welcome Jiang Qingyang. Damn fatty, you can do it. Jiang Wang was already punching in his heart, but on the surface he was smiling brilliantly. He elegantly formed a simple hand seal, and the illusion formation enveloping the Taishu Corner Tower disappeared. It could be considered an unveiling. Wow, it looks amazing. How impressive. Amidst the praise, Jiang Wang felt particularly ashamed. What appeared in front of everyone could only be described as a magnificent and dreamy building. The entire corner tower was 5 stories high. It emitted a dreamy silver-white light, like flowing moonlight. There were a total of 5 corners, all on the top floor. One was the top, reaching straight to the sky. The 4 corners stretched out and faced the 4 directions. There was a colored glazed treasure tree hanging from each of the flying corners. They shone brightly and looked like the most precious treasures in the world. Actually, the main cost is in appearance. The remaining few floors all had round eaves. On the round stone eaves, ancient and mysterious characters were drawn, as if they were describing some incredible secret technique or telling an ancient myth. Even Changgung Sheng himself doesn't know what that means. This was the Taishu Corner Tower, embedded with precious pearls and inlaid with bright jade. It was extremely luxurious and luxurious. It looked very impressive. But in the jade slip that Su Zifu gave to Jiang Wang, the Taishu Corner Tower was clearly a 5-story stone building with a very plain appearance. Changgung Sheng strictly followed the requirements and built the Taishu Corner Tower, but the exterior was completely changed. There was only one purpose: to make it look luxurious and valuable. Even if Su Zifu came, he might not be able to recognize it at first glance. The more the onlookers exclaimed, the more Jiang Wang blushed with shame. Changgung Sheng was already shouting, "Come, come, come, don't be noisy, don't push. One Dao Origin Stone, go in and take a look. Everyone line up. The number of visitors is limited." The Dao Origin Stone was a very solid currency. One Dao Origin Stone for one visit was like a waste of money. Jiang Wang didn't think that anyone would be fooled. But immediately, an excited voice sounded. "Of course I want to see such a top-notch cultivation place. Don't fight with me. I'll be the first." A young man with a simple and honest face paid the Dao Origin Stone very decisively and rushed into the Taishu Corner Tower impatiently, as if pouncing on some peerless treasure. Jiang Wang took a closer look. Wasn't this the servant of Changgung Sheng's residence? With the first, there would be a second soon. With the surging emotions, the people visiting the Taishu Corner Tower quickly formed a long line. Fortunately, the guards of a city lord's residence maintained order outside the tower. Otherwise, who knew how chaotic it would be? Jiang Wang had been fighting for a spot in the Yellow River gathering for the past 2 days. He really didn't know that Changgung Sheng had made such sufficient preparations. Year 2, he was a little embarrassed. Wasn't he letting down Big Brother Liu, whom he had just befriended, by tricking the cultivators of Tianfu City like this? There was already a burst of cheers from the side. Good. Looking at the dense crowd, Lu Zhongxiao couldn't stop smiling. Young Master Sheng is really a dragon among men, a business genius. If you cultivate the business path, I'm afraid you won't have anything to do with celebration. Jiang Wang silently shut his mouth. The person leading the deception wasn't embarrassed. The local officials were all smiles. He was just an obscure major shareholder. What was there to be embarrassed about? Forget it, let them be. It was just closing his eyes and collecting money. Jiang Wang, who was in a complicated mood, obviously underestimated young Master Sheng's talent. The line continued for a while. "Too magical," a very exaggerated voice sounded. A middle-aged man was the first to rush out of Taishu Corner Tower. His hands were trembling crazily, his face was shaking nonstop, and he shouted with tears streaming down his face, "I seem to have seen the true meaning of Tao. Today, the realm that I haven't broken through for 3 years will be open for me." He stood up, turned into a stream of light, and flew away. What an expert's demeanor. The crowd that was still watching suddenly exploded. They crazily squeezed into Taishu Corner Tower. Let me in, let me in. I want to take a look." "Look what? I'll book a seat directly. Get out of my way." Jiang Wang was speechless amidst the excited clamor of the crowd. It was really difficult for that shadow guard just now. He was an expert in infiltration, intelligence gathering, and assassination, but he had to put on such an exaggerated performance in front of so many people. A shadow guard's life's glory was all gone with those tears. Cultivators with a certain amount of financial ability all squeezed their way to line up. The remaining cultivators who were in dire straits, and even more ordinary people who were curious about the world of cultivators, were still gathered at the periphery, appreciating the lively cultivation spectacle. In the crowd further away, there were 2 people wearing long cloaks. They silently watched the scene in front of the Great Void Turret. A clear and melodious female voice transmitted. This little fatty is quite good at deliberately mystifying things. The other voice was languid. It wasn't deliberate, but it naturally had boundless charm. The voice said, "Snakes have their own paths, and mice have their own ways. I think he's quite clever." The first female voice giggled. "Little sister Mayu, do you fancy this fat body? If you do, then hurry up and take action. Fat and strong, it's very nourishing." She sounded younger and more lively, but unexpectedly, she was the older one. The woman named Mayu seemed to have no intention of arguing. She only said, "If big sister likes it, Mayu will naturally let you have it." The crisp female voice suddenly sneered. "Does big sister need you to let me have it?" For some reason, a young man next to them smelled a whiff of fragrance. Suddenly, his expression became infatuated, and he moved closer to the two cloaks. The woman who spoke stretched out an index finger from under the long cloak. The fingernail was bright red like blood. Just before the young man approached, a soft and white hand gently grasped the finger with a bright red fingernail. "This is Chi," the woman named Mayu said languidly. "Big sister is tired of living. Don't implicate little sister." "Ha ha." The crisp female voice laughed and withdrew her index finger. The young man woke up in a daze, only to see two figures in long black cloaks walking away in the crowd. In the crowd of people. Mayu didn't know why. She suddenly remembered the sentence that the fat man said just now. "Unveil the mysterious veil." She couldn't help but laugh softly. That year, in that cave. Do you want to see me? Chapter 10-11. The business of the Great Void turret exploded. All the seats, including the most expensive private rooms, were filled to the brim. There were no empty seats. That was not a big deal. Chung Gung Sheng had specially introduced a scheduling system. They paid in advance and made reservations in advance. The list of cultivators who were scheduled was already 1 month later. Not only the cultivators of Linhai County, but even the cultivators of Qingtu County had rushed over. Even Fan Qingqing had specially written a letter to ask Jiang Wang about the Taishu Corner Tower. Of course, the letter also deliberately mentioned Dugu Zhao's cultivation. Perhaps he could improve through this kind of treasure land. After she arrived at Qingyang Town, she also took over the heavy responsibility of guiding Dugu Zhao's cultivation. With her outer building cultivation, plus her previous experience as an elder of the Five Immortals sect, of course, it was more than enough. Jiang Wang had always known that Fan Qingqing was not a simple person. Just one thing. When they had just left the coastal waters and arrived at Linhai County, she had no objection to Jiang Wang's words that the pursuers would not dare to come for at least 5 years. This was enough to prove that she did know the identity of Yin Guan and the others, and she had never mentioned it. She only said that she did not know who it was. But this did not mean that she was unreliable. Jiang Wang's current identity and status could provide her with protection. The study of the Immortals classics could bring her the opportunity to break through in the future, as long as she maintained her speed of improvement. This kind of clear-headed person was not easy to do stupid things. Jiang Wang immediately replied and promised. After the Zhengsheng Hall was built, she could find time to come to Tianfu City to try. No matter how busy the business of the Taishu Corner Tower was, as the owner of the Taishu Corner Tower, he could always spare a few seats. The enthusiastic crowd brought by the Taishu Corner Tower made Lu Zongxiao smile even brighter. The casino business that Chongxian Fat was in charge of was also making a lot of money. Judging from the popularity of the new branch of the Fragrance of Threefen restaurant, the commission at the end of the month was another large sum. The profits from these two deals were all credited to the Daxing Trading Company. Speaking of which, the current Daxing Trading Company, with Qingyang Town and the Land of Sun as its hub, controlled a border county trade route, and its business was already doing well. In addition, with the completion of the Taishu Corner Tower in Tianfu City and the establishment of a good relationship with Tianfu City Lord Lu Zongxiao, it wouldn't be difficult for him to do some business in the future. Chung Gung Sheng himself had also separated the Daxing Trading Company from the Zhonggenjia business. He had strictly drawn the line and had never crossed it. After all, it was easy to deal with his relationship with Jiangwang. However, once it involved the interests of the Zhongnjia, it would not be easy to deal with. In the state of Qi, the Dushing Trading Company was definitely one of the most successful trading companies this year. Of course, this was only a competition among the newly established chambers of commerce. It was far from being able to compare with a leading chamber of commerce like the Four Seas Commerce Alliance. The reason why the Dushing Trading Company couldn't be at the top of the newly established chambers of commerce was because of another chamber of commerce that was jointly formed by many small companies. The Hachang Chamber of Commerce. This chamber of commerce had only been established for a short period of time. It basically grew by eating the rotten meat of the Jubao merchants. A few of the companies were previously creditors of the Jubao merchants. A large amount of debt was transferred to the Jubao merchants. Once the Jubao merchants collapsed, many of their businesses were directly used to pay off the debts. During the entire process of the Jubao merchants' collapse, the three companies that were the most satisfied were the Four Seas Commerce Alliance and the family business of the Zhongnjia. Cheng Gongsheng also used these benefits to firmly bind the family elders in the family. The third company was the Hachang Chamber of Commerce. There were as many as 15 small companies that formed the Hachang Chamber of Commerce. The leader of the Chamber of Commerce was a mysterious person with the surname Qi. He almost never showed his face in public. Within the Hachang Chamber of Commerce, he was respectfully called Mr. Qi. Of course, Jiangwang rarely worried about these matters. The saying, "capable people do more work," meant that everything was handed over to Cheng Gongsheng. As for Jiangwang himself, naturally, he was diligently cultivating and actively preparing for the Battle of the Yellow River. He still closed the door tightly and sat alone. His mind was immersed in the great illusionary land. He didn't know if it was an illusion, but after the Taishu Corner Tower was built, the feeling of entering the great illusionary land became more natural. The Hein Remote's voice rang in his ears again. In the past, Jiangwang's thoughts about it had no basis. Now he had a few ideas. Was it that mysterious true Lord, Su Yuanji? Thousands of thoughts corresponding to every cultivator in the great illusionary land? Or was it a manifestation of some Tao law? The voice didn't care about Jiangwang's feelings. It continued to happen according to the established rules. Taishu Corner Tower has been built. Obtain the honorary title, Messenger of the Great Illusionary Land. Jiangwang had a kind of enlightenment. Not to mention that there were still 2 inner mansions waiting to be opened. Just at the level of the 3 mansions, there was still a 3rd inner mansion's instantaneous Tao technique that had not yet been engraved. If he wanted to engrave the 3rd inner mansion, the Tao technique at the level of the outer mansion's A-class superior grade was of course the first choice. But if it was not for his extraordinary talent, extreme compatibility, or his own creation, which had an innate advantage, the engraved Tao technique of the inner mansion cultivator was limited to the A-class mid-grade or below. Jiangwang would not consider engraving Tao techniques below the A-class mid-grade. As for the A-class mid-grade or above, the Zhongnjia naturally did not lack exquisite Tao techniques. But even with the status of Cheng Gongsheng, it was not easy for him to use them. After knowing some information about the Great Illusionary Land, Jiangwang's vigilance towards the Great Illusionary Land decreased by a lot. Using the Tao development platform to deduce Tao techniques could still be an option. But now is not the time. With a slight thought, Jiangwang had already stepped onto the Tao development platform and whistled through the Milky Way. He was now ranked 10th in the inner mansion stage of the Great Illusionary Land. If he did not guess wrongly, after obtaining the honorary title of the Great Illusionary 5 Elements Cultivator, the Tao development platform's effect would be upgraded by another level during the duration of the title. And after obtaining the honorary title of the number 1 inner mansion of the Great Illusionary Realm, the Tao development platform's effect will be permanently upgraded by another level. Therefore, after obtaining the title of the number 1 inner mansion of the Great Illusionary Realm, Jiangwang's current 3-level Tao development platform will be able to unleash the effects of the 7-level Tao development platform. Chapter 10:12. In the Shining Palace. The Daki Empresses sat on the phoenix chair without saying a word. She naturally had the bearing of the world. In the echoes of footsteps, the crown prince hurried over with a concerned look. "Mother, why did you summon Aken so urgently?" The palace maids standing in wait all lowered their heads, and even their breathing was faint. They were trying their best to weaken their presence. The Daki Empresses looked down at her son, who was bowing sincerely. She asked calmly, "Do you know what happened to Hijun?" Jiang Wuhua let out a sigh of relief, and then sighed again. Aken already knows. He said that Hijun drove a carriage in the middle of the city and disturbed the people. He was arrested by the patrol office. The Daki Empress's voice was dignified. She said softly, "If you know, then you know. Don't do anything unnecessary." Jiang Wuhua looked at her face and said carefully, "I know what I'm doing. I didn't hurt anyone, and the impact wasn't too bad. Even if I don't do anything, I can't bear the heavy punishment. But my cousin, he can't avoid some suffering." The Empress he only asked, "What were you doing when you found out?" Jiang Wuhua said embarrassedly, "Aken was cooking for Ning Er." The crown princess of the Qi, Song Ning Er, didn't come from a prominent family. She was just the daughter of an ordinary minister from the Ministry of Rights. This was the marriage arranged by the Empress he. Jiang Wuhua and the crown princess had always had a good relationship. The Empress, he said, "You should cook well." Jiang Wuhua said, "It's not a big deal. It's just a matter of greeting. You've greeted them today. What about tomorrow?" The Empress, he frowned slightly. She was already angry. If the imperial uncle's family really knows what they're doing, they won't do such a thing. Your uncle is arrogant but incompetent, and your cousin is ignorant. Every time you greet them, you're giving them a bit of courage. Again and again, he went around. There will be a day when you can't take it anymore, and neither can I. Jiang Wuhua lowered his head. "Aken knows." Empress, he raised her hand and said, "Go back. Your uncle has come to the palace to pester me several times. I have already rejected him for you." Jiang Wuhua bowed respectfully. Before he left, he paused and said, "It's not that I don't know how powerful it is. I'm just afraid that mother will be sad." Wuhua, a mother's heart can only be hurt by her own child. You can sit back and relax, and your mother will be immune to poison. If you... She didn't continue. It was only at this moment that her voice revealed some emotion. However, she quickly regained her noble and graceful demeanor. "You may leave." "Aken, please excuse me." Jiang Wuhua didn't show any emotion. He bowed respectfully again and left. Among all the children of Emperor Qi, no matter how one looked at it, he was not the most outstanding one. He was also not the most favored one by Emperor Qi. However, he was definitely the most infallible one. In the matching battles in the great illusionary land, the higher the ranking, the more difficult it was. There was no weakling among those who could fight until now. Moreover, those who could fight their way into the top 10 of the Intermansion realm had at least the honor of being a Six Directions cultivator when they were in the Soaring Dragon realm. After knowing the benefits of the honor, it was even more impossible for them not to fight for it. However, Jiang Wang was still steadily rising. The series of bloody battles in the bewildering world made him very accustomed to this kind of sudden battle. Needless to say, if the deaths here were real deaths, his speed of climbing up the ranking would be faster. After 5 rounds of hardy battles, the lofty voice that they had been waiting for finally arrived. Promoted, ranked 5th in the Intermansion realm. Received the honor, Great Illusionary 5 Elements Cultivator. The first time you achieve this name, you will be rewarded with 1,000 merits and 1,000 techniques. In the middle of every month, you will be rewarded with 100 merits and 100 techniques. While maintaining this name, the effects of the Tao developing platform will increase by 1 level. The Great Illusionary Land was relatively stingy with its rewards for merits and techniques. It even encouraged cultivators to spar more and put in a lot of effort to deduce secret techniques. This was very normal. The Great Illusionary Land itself also grew through the collision of countless inspirations. For Jiang Wang, techniques were more difficult to obtain than merits. This was because he had obtained Guanglia's blessed land from the very beginning. Every month, he would receive a fixed amount of merits. And in the matching battles on the sword discourse platform, he won more than he lost, so he would regularly receive a lot of merits. For other cultivators, this might not be the case. For example, some people with average talent but extremely good family backgrounds could easily take out a large number of merits and secret techniques to contribute to the DAO developing platform and receive a large amount of techniques. Relatively speaking, cultivators who had both talent for battle and creating DAO techniques were the ones who were most welcomed by the current rules of the Great Illusionary Land. In this world, they could be like fish in water. Jiang Wang's current accumulated effort was 6,300 points, and accumulated method was 24,400 points. To upgrade from the 3rd level to the 4th level of the DAO developing platform, he needed 100,000 merit points. But because he had inherited the Moon Key from Zhuo Guanglia, Jiang Wang only needed 30,000 merit points to unlock the 4th level of the DAO developing platform. He still needed 5,600 merit points. There was still a long way to go. The only way to obtain merit points was to obtain the honor and contribute secret techniques to the DAO developing platform. With Jiang Wang's current resources, it was very difficult to quickly unlock the 4th level of the DAO developing platform. He was not in a hurry to deduce the engraved DAO techniques to adapt to the 3rd level of the Great Illusionary Land. He still wanted to strive for the honor of being the #1 inner palace in the Great Illusionary Land and increase the effects of the DAO developing platform by another level. If it was difficult, then he would retreat and strengthen himself first. But before that, there was still a problem. All in all, the honor reward of the Great Illusionary 5 Elements cultivator did not disappoint, but it did not exceed his expectations. The Great Illusionary Sex, Su Zifu, specially reminded him that he hoped he could obtain the Great Illusionary 5 Elements cultivator as soon as possible. Was it just a simple sentence of expectation? If it was just a reward of merit points and a fixed enhancement effect of the DAO developing platform, why was he in a hurry? He did not know if it was because of Jiang Wang's thinking or if the matter itself required a certain amount of time to react. Just as Jiang Wang was pondering this question, the High and Remote's voice sounded again. The Great Illusionary Emissary has achieved the honor of being a Great Illusionary 5 Elements cultivator. Obtain the qualifications to enter the Hongmeng space. Hongmeng space. Wasn't it going to be open for a while? While he was still in doubt, the blessed land he was in had already quietly changed. Jiang Wang still did not know what a blessed land meant. He had fallen all the way from the true cave ruins to the 43rd ranked Jilong Mountain. Other than the decrease in merit points every month, he did not discover any other differences. All along, there had only been a small space which was similar to the mirror world where his physical body had entered the red mirror. Only the DAO developing platform, the sword discussing platform, and the sundial shadow could explain the difference. At this moment, other than these 3 things, a 4th thing had appeared. It was an ancient and heavy stone door. Chapter 10:13. There were no patterns or words engraved on this stone door. There was only an ancient aura floating on the heavy texture. It appeared suddenly, but it seemed to have been there for a long time. It had been there silently for a long time. Jiang Wang reached out and pressed on the stone door. Other than the slightly cold stone texture, he did not feel anything special. His Tao essence swam on it, but there was no reaction. At this moment, the small blessed land space he was in was very similar to the mirror world where his physical body had entered the red makeup mirror. He could only see an inch of land. Everything outside was vast. However, the great void illusory realm was much safer than the red makeup mirror's mirror world. In the red makeup mirror's mirror world, Jiang Wang did not dare to take a step forward. The few adventures he had were all fraught with danger. However, he had never encountered any danger in the great void illusory realm. The premise of the joint supervision of all parties also ensured the safety of the great void illusory realm. Therefore, Jiang Wang gently pushed, and the stone door opened. Moreover, Heaven and earth have yet to be opened. There is no distinction between clear and turbid. All things are chaotic. This is primordial. There was nothing. There was not even darkness. Because there was no light, there was no concept of darkness. Jiang Wang appeared in such an indescribable place. He could not sense anything in the world, nor could he sense his own existence. In such a muddle-headed state, the first thing that appeared was a voice. It was the high and remote's voice. Great void envoy, great void six directions cultivator, Dugu Wudi. You have entered the Hongmeng space. A world of voices in a state where he knew nothing and had nothing to gain. Jiang Wang's first reaction to this voice was not to understand its content. Instead, he subconsciously activated the voice of the five immortals' dream command. Or rather, he activated the voice of the immortal code that lacked the existence of the spell. He wanted to feel and explore vast, grand. That voice was clearly high and remote, as if it came from beyond the sky. However, when he used the voice of the five immortals' dream command to sense this voice, it was as if he had rashly barged into a grand world. It was so wonderful, so magnificent, and could accommodate endless fantasies. The indifferent voice that had always been high and remote seemed to have uttered a curious syllable. This was Jiang Wang's last impression. He was completely unaware of what happened next. In a certain unknown place, the mountain peak hung upside down high in the sky, surrounded by clouds and mist. The escape light came and went, shuttling back and forth like lightning. From time to time, a white crane would pass by, completely unfazed by the cultivators rushing to and fro, leisurely and contented. The crane's cry was long and drawn out, like the ringing of a bell. Suzafu's sleeves fluttered as he stepped on the clouds. From time to time, gazes as vast as mountains and seas would descend from the inverted mountain peaks. Suzafu did not resist and accepted the monitoring calmly. These gazes came from the supervisors of the various top forces. Marshal Uncle is back. Uncle Master. Occasionally, there would be people who would greet him while he was shuttling back and forth like lightning. However, all of them would just hurriedly leave behind a few words of greeting without any proper greetings. Most of the escaping lights acted on their own, treating him as if he did not exist. Not only did they treat him as if he did not exist, most of the owners of the escaping lights were in a hurry and were unwilling to rest. Suzafu did not mind. When someone greeted him, he would respond with a smile. When no one responded, he would go on his own. Junior brother, come quickly. Suddenly, a female cultivator with disheveled hair and a dirty face jumped out, grabbed his hand, and flew to the side. You said that you would be used by me this month. Where did you go? Hurry up, Suzafu hurriedly explained. I was ordered by my master to— Who cares about those stupid things? The female cultivator interrupted him rudely. Come and help me keep an eye on this Tao technique. See how it evolves. With a sweep of the escaping light, the two of them had already disappeared. The vast clouds descended. It was still the same clouds and wind. After piercing all the way down, one would be able to reach the lowest point of this unknown place, a place that ordinary cultivators could not approach at all. This was a flat land, and beyond the flat land was nothingness. Everyone who lived here knew that the nothingness was the boundary. On the flat land, there were 3 stone houses, one in front, 2 behind. They could not be said to be grand. They looked very ordinary. The stone house in front had the words Ancestral Hall carved on a hanging plaque. These words were very beautiful, but unfortunately, not many people could appreciate them. There was no one in the 3 stone houses. The only person on this flat land was sitting cross-legged at the edge of the flat land, facing the nothingness. However, this person did not look at the nothingness. Instead, his eyes were closed. This was a cultivator whose age could not be determined. Even his face could not be seen clearly. It was unknown how long he had been sitting there, or whether he was sitting there or not. He seemed to exist at any time, but also seemed to disappear at any time. Between the nothingness and reality, he uttered a voice with a question. Something very interesting had just happened. In that great cultivation spectacle, there was a young man who heard his voice. This was not something that could arouse people's curiosity. The voice that appeared in the great illusionary realm was a copy of his voice. Almost every cultivator who entered the great illusionary realm could hear his voice. However, this hearing was different. For a powerhouse at his level, his body moved and the Tao followed. Every word and action of his changed everything. Generally, when they appeared in front of others, they would restrain themselves. When they communicated with others, they would suppress their strength. Otherwise, unpredictable changes would occur. Suppressing oneself was to protect the main world and others. At the same time, it also isolated the possibility of others spying on one's Tao law. The great illusionary realm was such a great cultivation spectacle. His original consciousness wandered in it without hindrance. However, at that moment just now, there was a strange misunderstanding. The Hongmeng space was not completely open. First, it was evolving. The normal copy of his voice still happened normally. This should not have been any different. However, that young man had traced the origin of sound in a way from the ancient times. Simply speaking, he had briefly heard his voice, his true voice. From a certain perspective, he had listened to his Taoist principles. For example, the meaning of the word Tao could be understood at a glance. His voice could also be regarded as Tao, sound to a certain extent. Of course, one of the reasons why the word Tao was hidden was that some Tao words were too powerful and could easily kill those who saw them. As a result, there were many cultivators and even more dead. Due to that young man's strength, he could not have heard much. This was the reason why he was surprised. Such a weak young man was actually able to grasp this strange misunderstanding and really take a step closer to the origin of his voice. Even if it was such an insignificant step, it was still an exploration that showed great talent. For some existences, this kind of thing could be considered an offense. It would not be too much to destroy it. However, for him, it did not matter. He only made a soft hush sound. Other than that, he did not have any other reaction. He neither helped nor interfered. Chapter 10:14. What's wrong with this person? I don't know. He's just lying here all of a sudden. This was a long street. There were many pavilions on both sides of the street, but they were all covered in a layer of clear light. They could not be seen clearly, and it did not look like they could enter. There were few pedestrians on the street. Most of them were walking by themselves. Only in the middle of the long street, there were 3 or 4 people gathered. There were both men and women, and they surrounded a person who had fallen to the ground. One of them probably felt bored and walked away without saying a word. The remaining 3 people continued to chat, because height, short, fat, thin, beautiful, and ugly were not very reliable in the great illusionary land. They simply used A, B, and C as substitutes. Jiaqi said, "This is the first time I've seen someone faint in the Hongmeng space." B muttered, "I don't think he fainted." C came over and asked, "Brother, what do you mean?" B smiled confidently. "A person who fainted should not talk in his sleep." A scratched his head. "I didn't hear him talking in his sleep." He said indifferently, "His voice is very faint and very thin, like it has been woven into a thread and is drifting somewhere. If you feel it carefully, you can hear it. This person's study of the Tao of sound is very deep. He can use it so meticulously even when he's asleep." C silently felt for a while. He's indeed talking in his sleep. What do you mean by O and Pei? It's just sleep talking. How can it be organized? A sighed. This person is really talented. He came to the Hongmeng space to sleep. He even slept on the street. C smiled. The sky is his blanket, and the ground is his bed. Why not? Moreover, no one could do anything to him here. Not necessarily in reality. It said, if you have a vigilant spirit in the real world, he must be the same. Second, analyzed methodically. This might be a unique cultivation method. I was still curious, coming to the great illusionary land to practice Tao or discuss swords is a kind of cultivation. What is he cultivating in his sleep? I don't know about that. Second was obviously very knowledgeable and knowledgeable. However, I heard that there was a secret technique in ancient times that allowed one to enter God through dreams. It's somewhat similar to this situation. Jiang Wang slowly woke up from his endless grogginess. He had a splitting headache. He only remembered that he had pushed open the stone door and entered the Hongmeng space. Then, he heard an exclamation of surprise. After that, it was a mess of chatter. What's wrong with this person? This might be a unique cultivation method. Zhang Xian muttered to himself. What the hell was going on? Wait, why are there people chatting? Jiang Wang opened his eyes completely and saw 3 heads, each occupying one side and bowing their heads to him. All 6 eyes were filled with curiosity. Resisting the urge to spit out a mouthful of true samadhi fire, Jiang Wang asked, Brothers, what's going on? A, B, and C looked at each other. After all, they had been observing and analyzing him. Now that he was awake, it was inevitable that they would feel a little embarrassed. In the end, they said, We were all wandering around the Hongmeng space and happened to see you lying on the street, practicing. Hongmeng space, that exclamation of surprise was indeed them chatting, right? However, he seemed to have gained something. The benefits of entering the Hongmeng space? Jiang Wang pondered carefully, lying on the ground and forgetting for a moment. I'm practicing, he said perfunctorily and asked, Brothers, how should I address you? A, B, and C looked at each other. Obviously, they were not familiar with each other and had gathered together to watch the show. It was Stille who spoke first. It just so happens that we are fated to meet. Why don't we make friends and get to know each other? I am Jia Fugue. He was still very calm. Shangguan, Jia Fugue, C, and Zhang Wang all looked at him, waiting for him to continue. My name is Shangguan. B added. He looked like a very low-key and calm person, but inside, he was turbulent and full of fans. This name was too flashy. Everyone had to respect him by calling him Shangguan. Third gave a simple and honest smile. I am Zhao Taizhu. All right, they were all fake names from the great illusionary realm. None of them were real. Jiang Wang smiled warmly. Little brother Dugu Wudi, Jia, Fugei, Shangguan, and Zhao Taizhu were collectively silent for a moment. Then, everyone cupped their hands. It's an honor to meet you. An honor to meet you. Only then did Jiang Wang notice that he was still lying on the ground. He quickly got up and mingled with the 3 brothers. The Hongmeng space was currently only open to a small area, so there were not many cultivators here. Many buildings had not been opened yet. It was unknown if there were any other differences here. Based on Jiang Wang's interactions with the 3 onlookers, the Hongmeng space was a more direct space for communication. It could accommodate more cultivators at the same time, and it was not constrained by familiarity or unfamiliarity. Just like the modern world, it was possible to meet anyone while walking on the road. Perhaps the most important point was that the Hongmeng space did not consume energy. In comparison, the Xing River space that Jiang Wang and Chenggung Sheng occasionally used was more like the early transition of the Hongmeng space, or a more secretive space for communication. Jiang Wang was more inclined to the former, because when the Hongmeng space was completely opened, the buildings on both sides of the street, such as inns, could undoubtedly easily replace the Xing River space. Of course, the Xing River space might also have new extensions later. His understanding of the great illusionary realm was still limited. Everything was uncertain. His interactions with Jia, Fugue, Shangguan, and Zhao Taizhu were lackluster. He believed that they also thought so. None of them revealed the truth. They were all there trying to get information out of each other. This was the right thing to do. In a place like the Hongmeng space where they did not know each other's background, it would be more suspicious if they did not hold back. However, this kind of interaction was also unavoidably tiring. Meaningless communication was an ability that many aristocrats needed to master. But for Jiang Wang, he was not willing to waste time. After chatting for a while, he took the lead to leave. Brother Dugu, take care. Let's have a good chat next time. It was a pleasure to meet Brother Wudi. Everyone was very enthusiastic. However, as soon as Jiang Wang walked far away, the topic changed. This kid really knows how to pretend. Jia Fugue spat. Maybe he really has the ability. Shangguan seemed to be very objective, and then said, But the name Wudi... I used to meet someone called Jun Wudi at the Sword Discourse Arena. He only knew how to shout and was not good at all. Zhao Taizhu smiled foolishly at the side. His true identity was a disciple of the Jing Kingdom's famous Zhongshan family. He was also very clear that anyone who could enter the Hongmeng space at this time would not be weak. He believed that Jia, Fugui, Shangguan, and even the already departed Dugu Wudi's real identity would not be too simple. But in this place, everyone put on a layer of disguise and completely threw away their usual demeanor. They were like ordinary people who could be seen everywhere on the streets and alleys, watching the fun. Gossiping behind people's backs was actually a very interesting experience. The more you lack something, the more you show it off. Zhao Taizhu added with a silly smile. Yes, yes, yes. Jia Fugui happily gossiped, perhaps because he rarely had such an opportunity. This guy's surname, Dugu, is definitely weak. If we meet at the Sword Discourse Arena one day, see how I teach him a lesson. Maybe he won't meet you, Shangguan said with a smile. Everyone laughed. At this time, Dugu Wudi, who had walked to the end of the long street, suddenly appeared in front of an ancient and heavy stone door. The handsome youth named Dugu Wudi gently pushed the door and stepped inside. The stone door closed and disappeared without a trace. On the entire street, everyone who noticed this scene suddenly turned their heads and looked over in unison. F***CK. The door to the Blessed Land. Someone couldn't help but curse. The three onlookers looked at each other in dismay. Jia Fugui blinked his eyes. Isn't this kind of person only focused on the Blessed Land? He actually came to the Hongmeng space to stroll around? Zhao Taizhu shrunk his neck. This person might really be invincible. Shangguan was still able to maintain a calm expression. Brother Fugui, it seems that he really won't meet you. Chapter 10:15. Jiang Mohan didn't know what kind of sensation he had caused. He still hadn't figured out the meaning of the Blessed Land. After a brief understanding of the Hongmeng space, he didn't plan to stay any longer, because the current Hongmeng space only had the meaning of communication. For him, it was equivalent to having no meaning. Cultivation was the most important thing. Leaving through the door of the Blessed Land was his subconscious choice. It was the same when he came to the Hongmeng space. He thought everyone entered and exited through the stone door. He didn't know what this meant. What he cared about the most was the faintly discernible feeling that had been lingering in his consciousness ever since he woke up from the muddle-headedness, as if he could grasp something, but it also seemed very far away. He returned to his blessed land space and exited the great illusionary land. He sat cross-legged, emptied his body, and let his mind wander. What was that faintly discernible feeling? He was in a trance, floating. He knew that feeling was in a mysterious place, waiting for him to touch it, but he couldn't touch it. What was it? Where was it? He searched hard, but couldn't find it. Impatience. Once the impatience arose, Jiang Wang immediately withdrew from the state of mind drifting. His vulgar heart was covered in dust, and he couldn't be at ease. There was no need to be anxious, Jiang Wang silently told himself. His usual self-control took the upper hand again. He began to examine himself with a clearer attitude. Where did that faintly discernible feeling come from? He couldn't remember clearly, and he couldn't be sure. Then, when did it happen? He had just pushed open the blessed land stone door, entered the Hongmeng space, and heard the high and remote voice. What was he doing at that time? It seemed that he was using the Five Immortals' dream command to explore the essence of the high and remote voice. Yes, the Five Immortals' dream command. Jiang Wang shook off his distracting thoughts, no longer thinking about the faintly discernible feeling, and focused on reality, thinking about the Five Immortals' dream command. Ever since he obtained the secret technique, he had been trying to make the command of the dream command closer to the technique needed to be heard in the immortal scripture. With the virtuous azure cloud as a comparison, his dream command was indeed a step further than the one passed down by the Five Immortals sect's founder. However, he still failed to meet the requirements of the Immortals canon. If it was said that the technique needed to construct the immortal audio canon required a journey of 100 li. If the founder of the Five Immortal sects walked 1 li, Then all the sect masters of the 5 immortal sects walked half a li. Although Jiang Wang had taken a step forward, he had only walked 2 li. He was still 98 kilometers away from his final goal of 100 kilometers. In the previous practice, he clearly sensed that the distance of 1 kilometer was already the limit he could walk at the moment. But for some reason, at this moment, he suddenly had a lot of inspiration. No matter how hard one tries, the divine light has already been born. The world of sound was so delicate and vast. Every sound was an expression. Every syllable had its own unique charm. To listen, to capture, to feel. So beautiful, so complex, so small yet so grand. Jiang Wang made a series of hand seals on the spot, quickly completing the process of entering the dream, constructing the dream, sealing the order, and awakening. The dreamlike token sound token. Great Void Envoy, Great Void 6 Directions Cultivator, Dugu Wudi. He seemed to hear the high and remote's voice in his ears again, and once again felt that mysterious feeling. His hands subconsciously formed hand seals, and his inspiration seemed to be innate. His 10 fingers were like threading flowers, complex and gorgeous. Dao Technique Release. A piercing pain like needles piercing his mind. Jiang Wang came back to his senses, and that mysterious feeling had already dispersed. He had a kind of understanding in his heart. The harvest he had obtained from unknown sources was already over, but this world was already different. Sound. Subtle and complex, small and vast. The sound of mosquitoes and flies flapping their wings, the heartbeat of the guards outside the courtyard, the sound of people conversing on the distant street, the sound of the entire city. I can hear it. Countless sounds were arranged in a strange way, worshipping Jiang Wang's ears, and he could choose any one. The highest realm of cultivation in the 10,000 Immortals Palace was the 10,000 Immortals greeting. The 10,000 Immortals greeting me. The 10,000 Immortals greeting the ear. Jiang Wang could really feel that feeling of transcendence. All the sounds that he could hear were submitting to him, giving him whatever he wanted. This level was far from the level of ear immortal, but it could also be called sound immortal. Jiang Wang casually took out the red makeup mirror and looked at himself in the mirror. To be precise, he used the red makeup mirror to reflect his ears. Otherwise, if it was just for appearance, he could just condense a water mirror. His reflection in the red makeup mirror was still the same. However, his 2 ears were like jade carvings, warm and sparkling. Up until now, after the cleansing of countless primordial Tao energy, the tempering of the 4 spirits body tempering technique, and the nourishment of some heavenly and earthly treasures, Jiang Wang's body was already in excellent condition. However, this pair of ears from the inside out emitted a completely different luster. At this moment, it was transcendent. Under the reflection of the red makeup mirror, no other problems occurred. With a thought, Jiang Wang silently adjusted and removed its external appearance, returning the appearance of his ears to their normal appearance. He didn't want others to know that he had this kind of secret technique when he used the sound immortal in the future just by looking at his ears. It wasn't important whether it was beautiful or not. What was important was that it was low-key and practical. This Tao technique that was between the 5 Immortals Dream Token and the Sound Immortal Canon should be called the Sound Immortal. If it was purely to talk about the distance between it and the Sound Immortal Canon, it would be about 50 miles. The sudden increase in distance of 48 kilometers was all because of that wonderful light. However, it wasn't completely the 5 Immortals Dream Token or the Sound Immortal Canon, because there were many other inspirations integrated into it. This was a Tao technique that completely accommodated the Tao technique system of the modern world. Jiang Wang was very sure of this. This Tao technique was difficult to determine its grade because it didn't have any direct power and it had an extremely strong growth potential. However, it definitely wouldn't be lower than mid-grade A. It couldn't be more outstanding to be used in the 3rd inner residence. However, it might not succeed, because although it was a Tao technique, it also had some characteristics of the Sound Immortal Canon. It was difficult to rely on the inner residence's engraving to instantly generate the dream token. However, if he didn't put in the effort to engrave it in the third inner residence, there was a possibility of instantaneous activation. Then the value of the sound immortal would be greatly reduced, because under that mysterious state, the inspiration would naturally activate the Tao technique. Looking at it now, it was undoubtedly too cumbersome and too complicated. It was very unsuitable to be used in battle, unless it was used a period of time in advance. However, it also had a time limit and couldn't be used indefinitely. The current time it could last, Jiang Wang put away the red makeup mirror. Although his ears didn't change, he could clearly feel that the state of 10,000 voices come, I hear had disappeared. The entire sound immortal state lasted for less than 20 breaths. Chapter 10:16. Jiang Wang estimated that no matter how familiar he was with the Tao technique, he could only compress it to 16 breaths of time at most. 16 breaths of preparation was only exchanged for 19 to 20 breaths of time. The value of the immortal state in battle was directly reduced by more than half. Unless he could engrave it into the third inner mansion and use the power of the mansion to complete the instantaneous preparation. Only then could it return to its original value. Compared to the rotten wood mantra and the 8 notes burning the sea, the immortal state was much more complicated, and it was not only difficult. Jiang Wang originally planned to use the Tao development platform to deduce the engraving Tao technique in the third inner mansion, but now he had no other ideas. He understood the value of the immortal state the best. However, the Tao development platform could only be used to perfect and sublimate Tao techniques, but could not solve the problem of engraving Tao techniques in the inner mansion. This part could only be faced by Jiang Wang himself. However, for Jiang Wang, since the Tao technique was established, then the most difficult part had been completed. Although the remaining engraving was complicated, there were still traces to follow, and he could improve and adapt bit by bit. He never lacked patience and effort. He couldn't count the number of times he had struggled out of a hopeless situation. The effort to see hope was actually not very difficult. Jiang Wang sat cross-legged in the slowly passing light of the sun and moon outside the window, constantly polishing Tao techniques and sharpening himself. Sharpening a sword in the box for 10 years should be called the frost of the world. On the Riverview platform, the world's powerful countries gathered, and the winds and clouds converged. The reason why the Yellow River meeting had such a wide influence was not only because it gathered powerful forces that attracted the attention of the world, but also because it was also the time for the young Tianjiao to display their talent and the future of the countries. One had to know that the young Sun Yunji was once the first in the world. Since ancient times, the young Tianjiao had been the most eye-catching. Which young person did not want to stand at the top and look down on the world? Who did not yearn to be the first in the world? Every time the Yellow River meeting approached, the Riverview platform would become the place that attracted the most attention in the world. Countless people's attention was focused on here. The nobles met to outline the general trend of the world. Tianjiao gathered to compete for who was the champion. The surging winds and clouds made people yearn for it. The Yellow River gathering had always been divided into 3 stages. The inner mansion cultivators were in one round, and the outer mansion cultivators were in another round. The cultivators of divine descent had already broken through the limits of their lifespans. Normally speaking, they were already great figures and were no longer regarded as young people. Therefore, there was no god descent stage or above to determine the victor. However, it was not enough to include all of Tianjiao just to compete in the inner house and the outer house. Some people became gods at a young age. Wouldn't they be more talented than the inner mansion experts of the same age? Therefore, in addition to the inner house final round and the outer house final round, there was still a third round. It was an unrestricted finals for those under the age of 30. All cultivators under the age of 30, regardless of their cultivation base or nationality, could enter the arena. As the date of the Yellow River Conference drew near, Dachi's Political Affairs Hall began the final selection process. All kinds of news, big and small, were spread like wildfire through all kinds of people. Even on the streets of Lindsay, people began to discuss who their country should send to fight. In a newly opened Three Fragrant Tavern in Tianfu City, it was inevitable that some customers would talk about the Yellow River Conference. A stage was set up in the main hall, and a play was being performed on it. The ones playing the musical instruments at the side were all beautiful young women. They played the zither, pipa, or eru. The play was very exciting, and the music was very tight. In my opinion, young master Mo Yinxing from the Mo family of Baiji should be the cheese #1 outer house cultivator among the younger generation. The customer who spoke had a flushed face and was hugging a girl. It was as if he was talking about his own family. He was very proud. Forget it. Who cares about the Mo family of Baiji? Wouldn't even know what the surname of Baiji County is now. A young master in a brocade robe sneered. Do you know Yang Jing, the younger brother of Biwu County's County Chief Yang? How can Yang Jing compare to Mo Lianqing? The previous customer was furious. In the history of the Yang family, the highest rank they had was a county chief. How can they compare to the Mo family? Look at you. I say east, and you say west. Is the Yellow River Conference a competition of family background? The young master in a brocade robe obviously had the upper hand. Even if it's a competition of family background, it won't be the Mo family's turn. The Mo family isn't even ranked high in chi, and they still want to embarrass themselves at the river viewing stage? The half-drunk customer opened his eyes wide. It's a competition of combat power. Mo Lianqing's battle record is outstanding, but who did he lose to again? But I haven't heard of Yang Jing. I don't know if it's just flattery. A man suddenly laughed and interrupted the conversation. I don't know much about Yang Jing, but Mo Lianqing's reputation is undeserved. He pulled his head out of the girl's embrace and revealed a long beard. He smiled and asked, wasn't he the one who offended Chongxian Fenghua and Lindsay? They were talking excitedly and attracted the attention of the people nearby. When they talked about the Yellow River Conference and discussed the strength of the heroes, the play on the stage became a bit boring. The beauty in the arms of the people lost her color. Who is Chongxian Fenghua? Someone asked in a low voice. TSK. The person next to him said with disdain, the one who stole all the glory of his generation. Then didn't he go into seclusion and not participate? It doesn't matter whether he participates or not. Mo Lianqing, who is in the outer sect, should go around him. A naive and lively girl glanced at the noisy customers and went upstairs with a bright smile. A group of cultivators who hadn't even reached the soaring dragon realm started to comment on the heroes of the world and the cultivators of the outer sect. Other than Yung Gunzuan, they didn't even bother to mention the inner sect cultivators. How interesting. She turned into a long corridor and walked to a door. She didn't knock on the door and pushed it lightly. The fingernails on her white and delicate hand were as red as blood. With a creak, the door opened. As soon as she stepped in, she saw a woman lying lazily on the soft couch in the inner room with her hand supporting her forehead. The girl was dressed very tightly. Only the sleeve of the hand supporting her forehead slipped, revealing half of her snow-white forearm. But for some reason, this fleeting snowy color seemed to cover his entire line of sight, lingering with endless charm that he couldn't get rid of. You're living a carefree life. The girl with a naive appearance and her voice were crisp and cute. The half-lying girl chuckled. Her voice was like the wind blowing through the clouds, directly entering one's heart. She didn't say anything else and only asked, Sister Ling, why are you unhappy? Ling giggled and waved her hand, closing the door behind her. As she walked forward, she asked, do you really care about your sister? The half-lying girl raised her eyelids slightly and glanced at her. Of course I care. But with this glance, Linger stopped in her tracks. P.S. 1. You must know that Xiao Riyunji was once the best in the world. 30 small portraits. Qing. Wu Qingdi the widely spread saying that you must know that Xiao Riyunji was once the best in the world was a mistake made by later generations. 2. Sharpening a sword in a box for 10 years should be known in the world. My own title, how can it be? 3. After thinking about it, I'll share the whole poem with my book friends and encourage you. This is a poem I wrote during my torturous period to show my sincerity. The whole poem is, there was a dragon's light between the bulls, shining outside the cold window of a young man. Sharpening a sword in a box for 10 years should be known in the world. No matter how difficult the situation is, please don't give up. When you were young, there was starlight shining outside your window. The treasure light of the bulls fighting ruins proves that you have great talent. You are a peerless sword. As long as you continue to sharpen yourself, persevere, and work hard, there will be a day when you will let the world see your edge. Chapter 10:17. The girl named Ling was only 3 steps away from the soft couch. This was a safe distance. It was also a dangerous boundary. Ling seemed to like to laugh. She smiled and said, "Sister Meiyu, you are so beautiful." Meiyu's slender index finger gently tapped her shiny black hair. She said lazily, "Sister, if you have something to say, just say it." Ling put her hands behind her back and looked around the room innocently. "Can I come to find you if I have nothing to do? I like you in my heart and want to be close to you." Meiyu's beautiful eyes turned slightly. The calm and lazy lake instantly rippled with captivating waves. "If you really want to be close, come closer." Ling jumped happily. She jumped sideways to the side of the tea table and sat down gently. The distance between her and Meiyu increased. She was petite and exquisite, like a girl who had just become of age. Her expression and movements were lively and cute. Only the charming Meiyu, who should be more mature, called the lively and cute girl sister. It was somewhat strange. Ling played on the chair for a while. Then she turned her head and looked at Meiyu, who was still half lying. "Speaking of which, why do we have to come at Chi? You should know very well that it is impossible to open a business here. The 4 great academies are not allowed to set up a branch of extraordinary power here, let alone our fragrance of 3 fragrances restaurant." "Sister," Meiyu said lazily, "let me remind you of one thing. I didn't ask you to come. You insisted on coming." Ling laughed crisply. "Aren't I close to you? I am afraid that you will be wronged outside." She shook her head. "Sigh, you don't know sister's painstaking efforts." Meiyu raised her hand and laid down directly. She closed her eyes and rested. "If sister doesn't let me be wronged, I won't be able to bear it." "What are you saying? Sister can't wait to dote on you." Ling was like a child. She shook on the chair and suddenly asked with interest, "By the way, what did you do to that priest from Yi Kingdom? I didn't bother you after that. With Yuan Tianshan here, what can I do to him?" Meiyu closed her eyes and said sleepily, "Young Master Yuan is a reasonable person." Ling obviously didn't believe him. There weren't many close friends in the building. The new younger sister doesn't share her heart with me either. Meiyu said softly, "My big sister Ling, when it comes to giving your heart to someone, you can't do it at the same time. I'm willing to do anything for you." For some reason, Ling smiled brightly again. "Tell me, what can I help you with? If big sister wants to help me, then let me have a good sleep." "No problem." Ling cheerfully jumped off the chair. She stood and looked at the soft couch, saying, "Sister will find someone to serve you well." How about that Jiang Qingyang, who pointed his sword at the first man of the Yellow River? The woman lying on the soft couch was truly a stunner. When she opened her eyes, they were full of autumn ripples. When she lay down, they were like mountains. She closed her eyes and pretended to sleep. Her eyelashes were long and curved. Her slightly pursed red lips were burning with silent passion. Hearing Ling Er's words, she didn't have any unusual reaction. She only said, "Okay, if you can do it." Ling giggled and turned to leave. Jiang Wang, who was wholeheartedly studying the Taoist inscriptions, didn't know that an old friend was nearby. He was immersed in the mysterious world of Taoist inscriptions and rejoiced at every little improvement. Little by little, he matched and adjusted. Finally, at a certain moment, the immortal state of sound was inscribed in the 3rd inner mansion. At this point, Jiang Wang's 3 inner mansions could be considered to have reached the peak of combat power. The three instantaneous Taoist inscriptions were the rotten wood spell, the burning sea of 8 sounds, and the immortal state of sound. The three inner mansions were the starfire that increased the fire element, the chasing wind that increased the speed, and the wind gate that increased the speed of the wind. And each inner mansion was bathed in the light of magical powers. True Samadhi fire, wrong path, and Bujo wind. He only needed to speed up the exploration of the inner mansion rooms and reach 3,000 as soon as possible. Then he could try to open the 4th inner mansion. Opening up 3,000 inner mansion rooms was the goal that Jiang Wang set for himself. Exploring the inner mansion rooms purely relied on the power of the soul to go deep. With the strength of his soul, after reaching this level, he began to feel strained. It wasn't that there was no possibility of exploring more rooms, but it was inevitable to take some risks. Compared to the benefits, there was no need. Although exploring the inner mansion rooms was a process of in-depth understanding of oneself. But the inner mansion level's observation of oneself was limited after all. Even if he opened up so many inner mansion rooms, Jiang Wang's understanding of himself couldn't sublimate to another level. 3,000 inner mansion rooms was already a number that ordinary inner mansion cultivators simply couldn't imagine. Going too far was as bad as not going far enough. Tidying up his mood, adjusting his state of mind, Jiang Wang once again entered the great illusionary land. He wanted to see the performance of the immortal state of sound in battle. The ranking rules of the great illusionary land sword discourse arena were not announced, but from such a long battle, one could roughly deduce 1 or 2. The 5th place fighting the 6th place and the 7th place, the increment of victory and defeat would definitely be different. And fighting up, no matter if one met the 4th place, 3rd place, or 2nd place, one victory would allow one to advance 1 place, but only 1 place. It wasn't that winning the 2nd place would allow one to become the 2nd place. Jiang Wang's luck could be considered pretty good. He was the 5th place in the great illusionary land, and there were only 4 cultivators left in front of him, but he was still able to match up at the first moment. And it just so happened to be the 4th place 5 elements cultivator, stepping onto the sword discourse arena, whistling through the galaxy. The ancient modeled sword discourse arena connected together. Jiang Wang unsheathed his long sword and directly started the battle, not saying a single word of nonsense. Rotten wood technique, 8 notes burning sea, human path sword style. In the fierce battle, he roughly understood his opponent's strength. Then he pried open the 3rd inner mansion, instantly activating the immortal state of sound. The changes in appearance had already been suppressed, and nothing special could be seen from the surface. But 19 breaths later, 10,000 voices come, I hear. Within the range of the sword discourse arena, all the sounds became clear, and the finest details could be heard. The sound of wind breaking, the sound of Dao techniques colliding. In the fierce battle, both sides still maintained the sound of steady breathing. All sounds were subdued by his ears. From the sound of muscles moving, the opponent was about to turn left. From the sound of Dao essence colliding, the opponent was about to fight with all his strength. It could only be said that the opponent was prepared to fight with all his strength and retreat to the left at the same time. Every expert who was good at killing would allow themselves to be in a state where they could accommodate several different trends at any time and be able to erupt with countless possibilities at any time to deal with the battle. But for Jiang Wang, who had grasped the astral path, in a situation where he knew the opponent's range of options, there was only one possibility. If he used the astral path at this very moment, Jiang Wang had the confidence to kill this person with 1 sword strike. Even if this person was already the 4th place in the great illusionary land. But even if he didn't use the astral path, under the immortal state of sound, the opponent's range of options was already very clear. Jiang Wang wielded his sword and went up, the cruel and cold Bujo wind blowing in his face. That opponent had a smile on his face, and one hand formed a circle, blocking with a light shield. On the other hand, his feet moved slightly, and he turned left like lightning. This step was so fast. He was already prepared to use the momentum to counterattack. But what welcomed him was the 8 sounds burning the sea that Jiang Wang had already prepared. His palm pressed down, and it seemed like he had arrived at the same time as his opponent. Chirp, 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 chirp. The cries of the flame sparrows played together with the sound of the waves. At this moment, the Buzhou wind had just shattered that light shield, and the sea of fire and the sound waves swept past. Only Jiang Wang was left alone on the sword discourse arena. Announce the reader group number. Welcome everyone to come and chat. Discuss the plot. Jixia Academy. 115-998-2294. Universal VIP Verification Group. 327980-714. Chapter 1018. Winner. Invincible Dugu. Current ranking. 4th in the Inner Mansion realm. The battle was already over before the immortal hearing state had even ended. This wasn't a match between someone ranked around 90, but against someone ranked 4th in the Inner Mansion realm within the Great Illusionary realm. In a battle of life and death, victory and defeat were often decided in an instant. However, the performance of the immortal hearing state was indeed a little too stunning. Strictly speaking, it wasn't just the immortal hearing state itself. I have heard all the voices. Although the immortal hearing state was powerful, it only controlled all the information that could be obtained through sound. Jiang Wang himself was the one who truly grasped the opportunity and decided the outcome. Jiang Wang's superhuman combat talent was the foundation. The combination of the two resulted in such a beautiful battle result. Reality proved that Jiang Wang's choice of the immortal hearing state without hesitation and expending a lot of energy to inscribe this Dao technique was a very wise choice. The battle just now wasn't the most eye-catching part of the immortal hearing state. What Jiang Wang sought through this battle was actually the wrong path. The greatest restriction of the wrong path divine ability was knowledge and vision. Knowledge was consciousness, and seeing was eye-knowledge. Discernment of reason, judgment of difficulties, and knowledge and vision. To a certain extent, it was also knowledge of oneself and seeing the enemy. The immortal hearing state could undoubtedly help to supplement the part of seeing the enemy. Thus, part of the restriction of the wrong path divine ability was removed. And this was the greatest value of this Dao technique at the moment. Jiang Wang couldn't help but think that if he could cultivate to the level of eye immortal, ear immortal, and nose immortal as depicted in the 10,000 immortals greeting the court painting, then wouldn't he be able to clearly understand the enemy in a single encounter? Seeing the enemy would no longer be a restriction. At that time, how terrifying would the wrong path be? This thought flashed through his mind. After all, it was too unrealistic. Even the immortal hearing state was still far from it. However, when he used the 8 notes burning the sea under the immortal hearing state, he felt some inconsistencies. The 8 notes burning the sea wasn't perfect. At least, it wasn't enough when it came to killing sounds. The outcome of a matching battle didn't stay in Jiang Wang's mind for long. Only by standing firm could one climb high. He silently settled his mind and entered the meticulous adjustment of the 8 notes burning the sea. This kind of demanding perfection that was almost harsh on himself. He wasn't like this for a while, not for a day. It was the same battle, but the winner and the loser naturally had different feelings. Jiang Zhaoyuan was the son of the Jing State's Azure Sea Guard's great general Jiang Kulian. He was also ranked 5th in the Palace Realm within the Great Illusionary Realm. He had just been knocked down from 4th place. As the only military empire among the top 6 in the world, the entire Jing Kingdom was ruled by the 6 Protectors' Army and the 7 Guards' Army, a total of 13 armies. The head of the military was the king. The 13 armies respected the monarch and ruled over the people. Jiang Zhaoyuan's identity could be seen from this. At this moment, he was sitting on his bed in a daze. Although he hadn't used his full strength just now and had held back in the great illusionary land, but had he lost just like that? That powerful combination of fire and sound out technique wasn't the main point. The main point was that his opponent seemed to have completely predicted his choice of battle. It was as if he had delivered himself to the door, taking the initiative to collide with his opponent's exterior-level Dao technique. This was something that would only happen when one's strength was completely overwhelming. For example, he could easily predict all of the soaring dragon realm cultivators' choices when dealing with them. Therefore, even though he was also a disciple of the Inner Palace, he was completely crushed. Even if he released all of his strength, was it really possible for him to win? Was there even a 1% chance? He intended to participate in the Yellow River Gathering and was also working hard to obtain a spot in the Inner Palace realm. However, the battle just now had undoubtedly poured a bucket of cold water over his head. In the great illusionary land, where the speed of expansion had always been limited, it was already so difficult to fight against a cultivator of the same level. How could he hope to be number one in the real Tianjiao? Zhao Yuan, a gentle voice sounded from outside. I didn't see you at the Colored Lantern Festival 2 days ago. Why are you tired again? This voice couldn't be more familiar. It was his best friend, Zhongshan Wei-sun. He was the grandson of the great general of the Qima Guards, Zhongshan Yinwen. The Qinghai Guards and the Qima Guards had always been harmonious. He and Zhongshan Wei-sun were also good friends who played together since childhood. Different from other friends who gradually drifted apart, they grew more and more like-minded as they grew older. Nothing, Jiang Zhaoyuan said in a muffled voice. The door isn't locked. Come in. Creak, Zhongshan Wei-sun pushed the door open and entered. He was wearing luxurious clothes and white jade. He had a smile on his face, and his manners were polite. In the military state of Jing, such a gentle and refined young master was very rare. Even Jiang Zhaoyuan himself was a burly man. He was used to being bare-chested and drinking large bowls of wine. Why is it boring again? Zhongshan Wei-sun said as he walked into the room. Going to the Yellow River Gathering and raising the flag for the Great Jing is what makes a man interesting. Jiang Zhaoyuan stood up and poured 2 bowls of wine. What's so good about the Colored Lantern Festival? It's not just what makes a man interesting. If Huang Shelley knows about this, she'll make trouble for you again. Zhongshan Wei-sun laughed and asked, Didn't we say that we'll see the results of the Yellow River Gathering when the time comes? Among the 7 guards of Jing, the bald great general of the Yellow Dragon Guards was surnamed Huang. Huang Shelley was his beloved daughter. She was quite fierce. She could use her fame to scare a man like Jiang Zhaoyuan. Jiang Zhaoyuan didn't respond to his previous sentence. He drank a bowl of wine and said in a muffled voice, You know the results, but I don't have a chance. Zhongshan Wei-sun naturally saw the outer building realm as something that was already in the bag. But he was a little surprised by Jiang Zhaoyuan's depression. This isn't like you. He asked what happened. The 2 of them were close friends, so there was nothing to hide. Jiang Zhaoyuan briefly told him about the battle he had just experienced in the Great Illusionary Land. The key point was that the other party's combat ability had completely crushed him. Zhongshan Wei-sun frowned. He was clear about Jiang Zhaoyuan's strength. Is another Zhuanglia? He asked. Can you tell which country he's from? Jiang Zhaoyuan shook his head. In the Great Illusionary Land, each one is better hidden than the other. How can I tell? Zhongshan Wei-sun thought about the name Zhao Taizhu in the Great Illusionary Land. He couldn't disagree. But, Jiang Zhaoyuan said again, that person's name in the Great Illusionary Land was very arrogant. I think he's a flamboyant person. Not necessarily. Zhongshan Wei-sun said, the arrogant person in the Great Illusionary Land may be just the right person to keep a low profile in the real world. This way, he can hide his identity better, right? What did you say his name was? Jiang Zhaoyuan said with lingering fear, Dugu Wudi. Dugu Wudi. Zhongshan Wei-sun turned pale with fright. That person was only in the Inner Mansion realm? Being in the Inner Mansion realm could take down the Blessed Land? How could it be? Even Zhua Guanglia couldn't do it when he was in the Inner Mansion realm. But Jiang Zhaoyuan didn't have to lie to him. There was actually such a Tianjiao in the world. Zhongshan Wei-sun only felt that the pride and arrogance that he had always been proud of had been crushed to the point that not even dregs remained. Noticing his friend's abnormal expression, Jiang Zhaoyuan asked, Why, you know him too? Zhongshan Weisun calmed his emotions with difficulty. I can only say that that person may be more terrifying and stronger than what you feel and imagine. Chapter 1019. The Yellow River meeting affected the thoughts of countless people in the world. Not only Qin Chu, but also Jing Mu. In a small courtyard in Xian city, Li Jianxiu pushed open the door and walked in alone. The famous peach branch in the Zhuang nation hung on his waist. His figure was bleak. He had failed. In the competition for a spot in the Yellow River meeting, he lost to Lin Zhengrun, who was from Wangjiang City's Dao Academy. The Zhuang nation had only risen to a new level through the country war last year. They needed time to digest the gains from the war. After all, they didn't have enough foundation. They couldn't produce a young and powerful cultivator who could compete with Tianjiao. They also didn't have the ability to participate in the unrestricted finals for those under 30 years old. Only those in the intermansion realm had a chance to show off. When Zhu Weiwo was still around, he naturally had no other choice. After Zhu Weiwo left the country, there was room for competition for this spot. Li Jianxiu had tried his best, but he still failed. There was nothing to be depressed about. Lin Zhengrun had always been stronger and more famous. He was also more valued by the emperor and enjoyed more resources. He had a good relationship with everyone. It could be said that he was the center of attention in the imperial court. In the battle, Lin Zhengrun's endless methods and trump cards that seemed to be endless made him accept his loss wholeheartedly. He used the peach branch to shock Xian city. However, Lin Zhengrun threw out one move after another, densely and endlessly, and actually wore down his Dao sword. His skills were inferior, so he deserved to lose. Victory and defeat were common, so he shouldn't worry about it. Back in Maplewood City's Dao Academy, the other party was the leader of Wangjiang City's Dao Academy. He was once someone who was on par with senior brother Zhu. Now that he lost, it seemed to be a matter of course. But he was still unwilling to accept it. But as for why he was unwilling, he couldn't say. He walked through the stone path of the small courtyard, stepped up the steps, walked into the quiet room, and closed the door. He sat cross-legged on the futon. At this moment, he moved his clenched fist in front of him and opened his hand. A green jade pendant was in his palm. This was Dong Shi's jade pendant. It was also the jade pendant left on Dong Shi's corpse. Minister Du Ruhui personally handed it to him. On the night of Dong Shi's death, he deliberately sent him away. When he returned to Xian city, he saw the dismembered corpse. That night, the conversation on the streets of Xian city, it was only in hindsight that he realized that it was Dong Shi's last words. Only you know how to sacrifice. Sacrifice is a sacred quality. It is the foundation of greatness. If there comes a day when the entire Zhuang country falls into darkness, you are the fire seed that I keep for this land. Until today, he still didn't really understand these words. Now he was sitting here alone. He had hated Dong A for the sake of the innocent souls of the deceased in Maplewood City, and also for the fact that Dong A had brought him along without hiding anything from him. Why did she not hide anything from him? Why did she have to make him suffer so much and suffer so much? But what about other than hatred? Now that he was sitting here alone, he was indeed reminded of that unsmiling man. A long time ago, when he was still in the Chengdao Academy, he had wondered what Dong Shi would look like when he smiled. However, he didn't expect that he would have to wait until his death before he could see it. What was he laughing about before he died? Li Jianxiu silently stroked the cyan jade pendant in his hand. It was said that the earliest owner of this jade pendant was Zhang Xinliang, Dong Shi's good friend when he was young. Zhang Xinliang gave it to Dong Shi, and Dong Shi gave it to, who did he get to? Such a small item, and its style was very ordinary. He really didn't pay much attention to it. There were so many people in Maplewood City's Dao Academy. It was impossible for him to remember what everyone was wearing. He knew what was in this cyan jade pendant. It recorded a secret technique called the essence control technique. It was a secret technique to improve one's ability to control Dao essence. He had already learned it when he was working with Dong Shi and remembered it by heart. However, He had not learned it when he was in the Chengdao Academy. Who could it be? The person who learned the essence control technique before him was probably the first person Dong Shi recognized, right? After that person's accident, Dong Shi chose him. That person must be very dazzling. Was it the bone messenger, Zhang Linquan, who had hidden in the Dao Academy and displayed excellent talent in thunder techniques? Was it the gentle and kind Wang Zhangxiang, who was born with a different bloodline from the Wind Sparrow? Or, for some reason, Li Jianqiu suddenly thought of a scene. It was also night. He was on night duty in front of the small pavilion in front of the inner courtyard. A delicate and handsome youth rushed over. Although he was anxious, he was not flustered. He opened his mouth and said, "Senior brother Li, a heretical demon is committing murder in the outer courtyard. A junior brother has already been killed. Please take charge of the situation." His body was injured, but his expression was normal. He had narrowly escaped death, but he could still speak clearly and be neither servile nor overbearing. That might not be the first time he met that youth. Because they were both in the Chengdao Academy, there was always the possibility of them meeting. However, it was the first time he remembered that youth. The first thing Dong Shi did after he came out was to expel the corpse poison for that youth. At that time, he felt that Dong Shi treated this junior brother who had just entered the inner sect extraordinary. He was very extraordinary. Dong Shi had a straightforward personality and was serious in his dealings. It was rare for him to be so gentle. Junior brother must be very outstanding, right? At that time, he thought so. Later on, it was indeed so. Regardless of whether it was in the Three Cities Dao discussion or in the trip to Three Mountain City, that junior brother had performed very well. They could be considered friends. He, who was once a defeated dog and a lone traveler, found the feeling of a companion in that junior brother. Later on, he went to the County Dao Academy, and they dated at an even higher place. At that time, they both had their own dreams. He wanted to solve the problem of the fierce beast forever. What was that junior brother's dream again? To be a high-ranking official, to be successful and famous, to stabilize a region, to let his sister have endless delicious food and new clothes? Later on, Maplewood City was gone. He also knew that his dream could not be established in the end. Could it be him? Such a thought suddenly flashed through Li Jianqiu's mind. He subconsciously clenched the green jade pendant and immersed his mind into it. The information belonging to the essence control technique slowly flowed into his mind. He was so familiar with every word. Dong Shi had once described it to him word by word. He felt them and chewed on the memories. Suddenly, a drop of blood jumped out in his mind. No, it was not just his mind. From a green jade pendant, a drop of blood really jumped out. A drop of bright red, plump blood. It directly crashed into Li Jianqiu's palm and crashed into Li Jianqiu's body. Pain. Intense pain. Li Jianqiu fell to the ground. He wanted to scream, but he couldn't make a sound. This drop of blood seemed to have endless power. It directly penetrated the 5 prefectures C and crashed into the first inner mansion. Li Jianqiu's first inner mansion was originally empty. This drop of blood fell in drip. It was like the spring rain falling. It sank into the ground of the inner mansion and disappeared without a trace. No, it left a trace. When the spring rain fell, everything happened. Li Jianqiu's pain disappeared. He felt a great power being nurtured. There was a kind of vigorous vitality, a kind of courage to face death and come back to life. It was like the spring breeze blowing across the barren land, ushering in a new year. A jade-colored seed drilled out of the ground of the inner mansion. It was like being pregnant for 10 months and giving birth in one morning. It leaped high and hung on the dome of the inner mansion. The jade-colored light illuminated the inner mansion. Li Jianqiu was no longer in pain. The vigorous power continued to occur in his body, but he did not get up. He lay on the ground in a daze. It was only at this moment that he understood what this drop of blood meant. That green jade pendant was left behind by Zhang Xinliang. It had once left Zhang Xinliang's essence control technique to Dong A. And Dong A had also left his mark in it. This drop of blood was the essence blood of the inner mansion, the essence of the divine ability. It was a masterpiece that belonged to the endless divine ability. This drop of blood was born after Dong A's death. Chapter 10:20. After retreating from the Hongmeng space, Jiang Wang shook his head and smiled. He didn't expect that entering the Hongmeng space would bring him such benefits and achieve the immortal state. Although it was an unexpected surprise, it was still a gain. He couldn't help but try a few more times. Of course, there were no other special changes. He pushed open the blessed land stone door and walked into the Hongmeng space. When he walked back, he was in his own blessed land. He didn't talk to anyone. After trying back and forth a few times and confirming that there were no new gains, he threw it to the back of his mind. Lord Jiang, who lived a fulfilling life every day, naturally didn't know that in the Hongmeng space, the guys named Jia Fugui, Shangwan, and Zhao Taiju were all scolding him for showing off. The adjustments to the 8 notes burning the sea were completed a few days ago. After the adjustment, the power of the 8 tones of burning sea was 10% higher than before. However, it still hadn't broken through the A-grade upper level. During this period, he also participated in a Blessed Land Challenge. Lord Jiang, who had already reached the 2nd place in the Great Illusionary Realm, was once again defeated cleanly. Before the challenge, he had already planned to do everything except go astray, but in the end, he still held back a lot. After all, he didn't have many opportunities to attack. From the 43rd place, Jilung Mountain, he fell to the 44th place, Tongbai Mountain. His monthly merit points decreased by 10 points, becoming 380 points. Along the way, everything had changed except for the Blessed Land, which was a consistent decline. He didn't know if those people knew that a weakling had appeared in the Blessed Land. In short, after so long, Jiang Wang didn't encounter anyone who gave up. His hopes of slowing down the decline of his ranking were repeatedly dashed. This made him miss the powerhouse who deliberately learned the ancient 9 virtuous swords before challenging him. Why didn't everyone come prepared before challenging him? But at least, Jiang Wang didn't feel sorry about this anymore. Anyone who lost all the way, no matter how proud or conceited they were, should have gotten used to it. They really couldn't beat him. They just treated it as an opportunity to spar with a powerhouse once a month. Thinking this way, he felt much better. Jiang Wang comforted himself. For the time being, he ended his cultivation and left this courtyard that Lu Zongxiao had prepared for him. It was specially used for seclusion. Of course, it wasn't that he needed to rest. When it came to cultivation, he never needed to rest. Calculating the time, there should be a result from the political affairs hall soon. Jiang Wang had gained a great deal from his seclusion this time. He had become even more confident and emboldened, and his steps had unknowingly become lighter. Ouch! A clear cry of pain rang out. A young girl about 14 or 15 years old was probably climbing the wall just now, but she accidentally fell down and was dizzy from the fall. The courtyard that Lu Zongxiao had prepared was clearly in a bustling city, but it could be considered quiet. Seeking tranquility in the midst of chaos is naturally the best. The door Jiang Wang came out of just happened to face the wall of the opposite courtyard. This impetuous little girl fell in front of him, just like that. The little girl fell to the ground and turned her head. Her cute little face scrunched up, and she looked at Jiang Wang with teary eyes. "Help! Don't be afraid," Jiang Wang said warmly. "I'll help you call for help. I'm busy." The little girl blinked her eyes. There were still teardrops hanging from her eyelashes. She looked a little confused. "Someone come," Jiang Wang called out. A guard appeared out of nowhere and rushed to Jiang Wang at top speed. He lowered his head and saluted. "Lord Jiang, what are your orders?" "Send this little girl to be treated," Jiang Wang ordered. "Put the cost on me." "As you command." The guard sent by Lu Zongxiao was very nimble. He turned around and picked up the little girl. Then he ran out of the alley. Xiangling the 5th-ranked heavenly fragrance of the Grand 3 Fragrances Pavilion, was still a little stunned. Why did things unfold like this? Could it be that I exposed my cultivation base? That's impossible. My concealment technique can't be seen through by cultivators outside the pavilion. She had prepared a whole set of methods to further contact him, but she didn't expect to be stuck at the first step. This Jiang guy actually asked a random person to send her off. Am I not cute enough? Am I not pitiful enough when I fell? Do they have any compassion? The people of Qi really don't know how to be gentle with women. But no matter how much she roared in her heart, she couldn't turn over and jump down now. Wouldn't that be exposing herself? Xiang Ling gritted her teeth in hatred. The guard was very responsible. He carried her and ran while shaking her. Little girl, hold on. Don't fall asleep. We'll reach the clinic soon. How shameful was this? Let me die, Xiang Ling silently covered her face. On the other side, Jiang Wang shook his head and went to Taishu Corner Tower. During this time, Cheng Gongsheng must be nearby. The little girl just now was indeed very cute and pitiful, but there was always a trace of unnaturalness lingering in his heart. But he wouldn't ignore it just because he wasn't sure if it was natural or not. But judging from the sound of the fall and the sound of her breathing, the little girl wasn't seriously injured, so he just needed to find a random clinic. Of course, he knew some medical Taoist techniques, but they were just mediocre skills. It would be best if he didn't embarrass himself. Taishu Corner Tower was still full of people, and business was booming. The two teams of guards stationed by Lu Zhongxiao had a very good effect. They kept the place in good order. It was very difficult for the Dushing Trading Company to do this alone. However, Zhong Xuansheng was not in the Great Void Corner Tower, nor was he in the Yuan gambling house. Instead, he was in a tea house. He had built a new tea house, and due to the popularity of Tianfu City, business was very good. Cheng Gongsheng took a sip of tea and said slowly, "Right now, I'm cultivating my body and mind." Oh, Jiang Wang expressed that he believed him. He casually found a seat and was about to sit down. Hey. Cheng Gongsheng hurriedly stopped him. As the second in command of the Dushing Trading Company, since you've come out of seclusion, you should do some proper business, right? It's already halfway through the month. Go collect the bill from Sanfin Fragrance Restaurant. Jiang Wang, speaking of which, it's already halfway through May. But wasn't Sanfin Fragrance Restaurant built not long ago? It's only been a few days. What kind of bill are you collecting? Go quickly, Cheng Gongsheng urged. Any manager can do this. Jiang Wang looked at him. What are you planning? Cheng Gongsheng shifted his butt. It's said that there's a transcendent cultivator there. The Imperial Court has very strict restrictions in this regard. It's not a problem to have a transcendent cultivator in this kind of cross-regional organization. However, if a transcendent cultivator imparts transcendent power in Qi, it's unreported and privately establishing a transcendent force. It'll be a serious blow. After all, I'm the one who brought in this business. Help me take a look and give a warning, so as to avoid future accidents. Jiang Wang was just about to ask why he didn't go himself. He looked up and saw 14th Prince. Okay, he didn't waste any more words and turned to leave the tea house. Chapter 10:21. Jiang Wang was no stranger to the fragrance of Sanfin Restaurant. Back in Maplewood City, it had been hailed as a paradise by many brothels. Back then, Zhao Ruqing often invited guests to drink with prostitutes. Other than Ling, He, Duan Jin, the other brothers often went. Of course, they only drank. They were all people with a bright future in the Chengdao Academy. No one really indulged in worldly desires. In Linzi, the fragrance of Sanfin Restaurant was lower than the 4 famous brothels. However, it wasn't because the fragrance of Sanfin Restaurant couldn't display the same standards. It was because in a place like Qi City, the fragrance of Sanfin Restaurant had to bow to the local tyrant. Jiang Wang had been to the fragrance of Sanfin Restaurant many times. From the Zhuang State to the state of He, to Qi City, and from Linzi to Tianfu City. The fragrance of Sanfin Restaurant's decor fitted the local style while retaining its unique characteristics. The thoughts and strength behind this were naturally extraordinary. I was wondering why the magpies were chirping so early in the morning. It turns out that Lord Jiang is coming. As soon as Jiang Wang stepped into the building, A charming brothel keeper welcomed him. Unlike many brothel keepers who used heavy makeup to cover up their flaws, the brothel keeper of the fragrance of Sanfin restaurant in Tianfu City was barefaced. Although she wasn't glamorous, she looked refreshing and not greasy. Of course, she couldn't be compared to the peach lady at the Jade Pavilion. She smiled at Jiang Wang and didn't come up to him to get intimate. Instead, she asked politely, "Do you have a girl you like?" Jiang Wang wasn't surprised that she recognized him. In any place, if one wanted to do business well, they would have to remember the names of the brothel keepers. Memorizing the faces of the local leaders could only be considered a basic skill. The most eye-catching thing in Tianfu City now was, of course, the Taishu Corner Tower. Even this branch of the fragrance of Sanfin restaurant came because of it, and the owner of the Taishu Corner Tower was Jiang Wang. Now that Yung Genzuan was in Jixia Academy and Wang Yiwu was on death row, he was the most dazzling Tianjiao of the younger generation in Qi City. Combined with all this, as long as the higher-ups of the Three Fragrances house in Tianfu City had a brain, they wouldn't overlook him. "I'm not looking for a girl." Jiang Wang didn't waste any time and went straight to the point. "I heard that there's a master coming over from your headquarters?" The brothel keeper's eyes were a little guarded, but she still had a warm smile on her face. "It's just that the Lord in the building is here to inspect and also to deal with some problems that our branch can't solve." This explanation was reasonable, and there was nothing illegal about it. Chongxian Fat would have taken action long ago if he had found any violations. He wasn't going to get himself involved in other people's troubles just because of a small partnership. Jiang Wang said softly, "You know Qi's rules. The only thing I want to remind you is not to cause trouble for me and Chenggang Sheng. The higher-ups of your main building will patrol and leave as soon as they're done. Don't dawdle in Tianfu City. Do you understand what I'm saying?" Of course. The brothel keeper's attitude was very amiable. "We do business all over the world. The reason why we can do it for so long is because we abide by the rules. Don't worry." At the same time, these words inevitably hinted at the strength of the fragrant building. However, this wasn't important. Jiang Wang had only come to give a warning. Since his goal had been achieved, there was no need to stay any longer. He turned and left. "Okay, I won't disturb your business." As for collecting debts now, he really didn't have the nerve to do so. "Hey, Prince Jiang, please wait a moment," the brothel keeper suddenly said. Jiang Wang turned around with a questioning gaze. "Our boss wants to see you," the brothel keeper said. "No need." Jiang Wang flatly refused. The brothel keeper obviously didn't expect this answer and was a little surprised. "You might have misunderstood. It's not our branch's boss. It's Lord Tianxiang from the main building." In her opinion, the Tianxiang and Xinxiang in the main building were all stunning beauties. No man wouldn't be tempted. From the western region to the eastern region, there were countless men who spent money like it was water just for a chance meeting. The reason why Jiang Wang refused was because he didn't know who wanted to see him. However, for Jiang Wang, he didn't know any Tianxiang and didn't feel the need to deal with them. In Qi's Tianjiao, there was a person who wanted to go to the Riverview platform to display the flag of the country. What was he thinking by contacting a high-level member of a sect that spanned across countries? Did he dislike his foundation in Qi for being too stable and too trusted? Jiang Wang didn't want to appear too cold. He only smiled warmly. "It's mainly because I'm busy with mundane matters and can't have time to spare. Let's stop here for today." The brothel keeper was tactful and didn't force him. She said politely, "Please take care." Jiang Wang was about to leave when he suddenly remembered something. He stopped and asked, "By the way, the fragrant building has branches all over the world. Your intelligence is one of the best. Do you know the White Bones Path?" The woman from the White Bones Path once lived in the Zhuang country's fragrant building. "You must be joking." The brothel keeper smiled. "We do business and abide by the rules. We never involve any sects or factions." Judging by her expression, she definitely knew what kind of organization the White Bones Path was. Jiang Wang didn't care about her explanation. He took out a Dao Yuan stone and placed it in her hand. If you have news about the White Bones Path, go to Taishu Corner Tower and contact the people from the Dushing Trading Company. We will pay you according to the weight of the news. We won't mistreat you. This is the deposit." He didn't wait for her to say anything and left. It wasn't that he thought the fragrant building and the white bones path had anything to do with each other. It was just a convenient thing to do. There were still some remnants of the white bones path. In the past, they couldn't even take care of themselves. Now that they had some business, it was time to look for them. When he returned to the tea room, Sheng still hadn't finished his pot of tea. So fast, he deliberately smiled. Jiang Wang ignored him. This fatty could only satisfy his cravings with words. He wouldn't have the chance to go to places like the fragrant building again. He only said, "I've delivered the warning. I think they're still sober. They probably won't do anything stupid." Sheng wanted to make some more jokes, but his gaze swept over the statue like 14th Prince, and he calmed down. It's best if they're sober. Speaking of which, it's really unlucky. The fragrant building used to be so honest, but after I started working with them, they started to change. There's probably a reason. Jiang Wang wasn't very willing to continue talking about the fragrant building. He changed the subject. "You rushed me to do something as soon as I came out of seclusion. I haven't had the time to ask you. Has the Yellow River gathering been decided? What problem could there be with the invitation from a rich dog? Although the final list hasn't been submitted to the emperor yet, it's more or less been decided." Sheng laughed gloatingly. He's not good at dealing with relationships, but he's still good at dealing with these kinds of things. Jiang Wang covered his face with his hands. "I don't remember telling you about Yin Fu. The news of you and Yin Fu going to the Fufeng Ryu clan to bully people has long been spread." Sheng sneered. "You still want to hide it from me?" Jiang Wang felt a headache coming on. He didn't say a single harsh word from beginning to end. How did it become a bully? Moreover, Yin Fu was indeed rich and powerful. Who would he rely on? This rumor might have something to do with Yu Yangqi, or it could be someone else. There were definitely many people in Linzi who wanted to ruin Yin Fu's marriage. However, Yu Huchang promised to take care of this matter. Once she appeared, any rumors would disappear. Forget it. Let Yin Fu worry about it by himself. Jiang Wang changed the topic and asked, "Who are those in the inner mansion stage?" Sheng was probably unhappy that Jiang Wang didn't reveal this secret of Yin Fu to him. His answer was cold and short. "You, Lei Zhanqian, Cui Ju." Chapter 1022. I know Lei Zhanqian. Hearing the name, Jiang Wang chuckled and asked, "Who is this Cui Ju?" "He's from the military." Sheng didn't beat around the bush when it came to serious questions. He's not from a famous family. He made a name for himself in the military and is now in the Lightning Prison Army. He's highly regarded by General Xiao. Jiang Wang knew Xiao Yuan, who was in charge of the Lightning Prison Army. He was also someone who climbed up from the bottom. There was no other powerful person with the surname Xiao in the entire Qi. After him, the Xiao family came into existence. In terms of background, it was far from being comparable to the Zhengginjia and the Li family. The most basic requirement for a top family was to have a hereditary title to ensure that the family's power wouldn't decline. Otherwise, no matter how powerful they would only shine for a short while. Once something happened, they would be gone. It was said that Imperial concubine Jing had been asking for a title for the Gao family because of this. Of course, as long as Xiao Yuan was alive, the Xiao family would be able to rise to the top of Qi. How does this person compare to Wang Yiwu? Jiang Wang asked. Sheng smiled. Wang Yiwu is the number one in the military. From the wandering pulse, to the heavenly cycle, to the heavenly path, to the heavenly path, he defeated all the experts in the military. I guess there's no exception now. Wang Yiwu used to be the number one in Qi, but because of Jiang Wang's appearance, he was now limited to the military. Jiang Wang didn't smile. "So, my only opponent is your cousin." This wasn't arrogance, it was confidence. Of the other two people who participated in the competition, one was a defeated opponent, and the other was the defeated opponent of another defeated opponent. He had no reason to feel guilty. Only Yung Gunzuan's name was set, but it wasn't the last step yet. There was still a possibility of change, and it depended on the emperor's thoughts. Sheng stopped smiling. If His Majesty really summons him, I guess it will be like this. "I'm so angry. Xiang Ling gritted her teeth when she returned to the building. You didn't care when I fell in front of you. When I went to the clinic, you came to the fragrance restaurant. Are you playing hide and seek with me? The more she thought about it, the angrier she became. She fiercely clawed at the air, causing a loud explosion. It was late at night. The fragrance restaurant was more lively. Mei Yu, who was sitting on the windowsill, glanced over. She was not surprised by the sound of Xiang Ling grabbing at the air, but she could not help but laugh at the black dogskin plaster on Xiang Linger's arm. In order to not expose herself, Xiang Ling had purposely made some bruises on her body. After being treated by the local clinic, it became what it was now. She was such a lovely little beauty, but she was stuck on by the dogskin plaster until she couldn't see any color. Apart from looking pitiful, she was also a little cute. How dare you laugh? Xiang Linger glared at him. However, when he looked over, his anger somehow dissipated. At this moment in her eyes, the woman in red was leaning against the windowsill, leaving only her side profile. Her right leg was half bent, and her right hand rested on her right knee. Her slender fingers were casually spread out like a magnolia flower. Her left leg hung naturally over the windowsill. Even under the complicated red dress, it could not hide the extremely beautiful line, straight and well-proportioned. Only her ankle was exposed, but it was enough to show her snow-white skin, not overshadowed by the red dress. Her skirt curled up like a red wave, and her feet stirred up a jade tide. Her left hand also drooped down, showing a kind of languid tiredness. It was just that the sky-blue crane beak jade teapot that was hooked on his little finger gave him a sense of freedom. There was no need to describe her face. Among all the heavenly fragrances and heart fragrances, Xiang Ling liked this face the most. It was clearly distant, but it was always endlessly charming. The window was open, and the night sky outside the window fell coldly, accompanied by the moonlight and starlight, shattered in one place. A breeze blew over, gently dispersing. The hustle and bustle downstairs seemed to have quieted down for a moment. I just noticed because I was so angry that I lost my mind. The beautiful scenery naturally made people gentle. Xiang Linger's tone could not help but soften. Why are you dressed so brightly today? Mei Yu gently curved the corner of her mouth and smiled. It goes well with wine. You look so good when you smile, good sister. Xiang Ling took a step forward in a daze, but immediately stopped vigilantly. She shook her head and giggled. Your charm makes it impossible for me to guard against it. Mei Yu did not speak. Xiang Ling said again, I heard that Jiang Yimu also refused to see you. She smiled. That makes me feel much better. Mei Yu said softly, find someone else. Don't waste time on him. This person is wholeheartedly focused on the Tao. He is unshakable. This person is the most suitable. He is famous and has a future, but he lacks a foundation. Xiang Ling did not know why she smiled again. No matter how wholeheartedly focused on the Tao, after meeting you, he will wholeheartedly follow you. He was not. When he was still very weak, he was very determined. Mei Yu sighed softly in her heart. She smiled and said, we have to find someone important in Qi as soon as possible to revitalize our sex situation in the eastern region. We should not fight with anyone here. That would be meaningless. The grand plan of fragrance of 3 fragrances to connect with the Tianxia branch had already begun. Mei Yu relied on her outstanding performance in Buyao City and the state of Japan to become Tianxiang in a very short period of time. In Qi, fragrance of 3 fragrances could not operate without restraint. However, in some small countries in the eastern region, they could slightly overstep the rules. However, even if they wanted to develop in other small countries, they still needed to have someone in Qi. The overlord of the eastern region was not just a title. It had influence in all aspects. No matter how well fragrance of 3 fragrances developed in the world, once they offended the upper echelons of Qi, they would immediately disappear from the eastern region. On the other hand, it was precisely because they wanted to jump out of this, although they are rich but not strong, although they are big but unstable situation that made it difficult to deal with the strong, that fragrance of 3 fragrances welcomed this change. Meiyu's timing was perfect. My head hurts. Xiangling acted like a spoiled little girl. I'm too lazy to look for him anymore. I have to take him down. Meiyu had specially asked someone to invite Jiang Wang to meet her. She wanted to go through the motions and show that her attempt had failed. Of course, it was not that she did not want to have a face-to-face chat, even if her face was covered. She did not expect Jiang Wang to refuse to meet her. However, after thinking about it carefully, she felt that it was reasonable. He was like the young man who held his sword in front of her sister and asked her to take the netherworld candle. It's up to you. She reminded her softly. If you want to make a scene, I can't do anything about it. However, the fat man beside him is very smart. You have to be more careful when you interact with him in the future. I don't want to go back alone and have a hard time explaining to the sect master. Based on her understanding of Xiangling if she insisted on stopping her, it would make her suspicious. If she generously gave in and only reminded her of the dangers, Xiangling should be able to understand after she calmed down. Don't worry, Xiangling chuckled. How can I bear to leave you, little sister? Meiyu did not say anything else. She only lifted the jade pot and drank a mouthful. Her swan-like neck glistened under the night sky. The beauty drinking alone on the windowsill was as beautiful as a painting. The hanging moon in the sky became a distant background. Xiangling was caught off guard and was stunned for a moment. She only thought in her heart, no wonder she was called Meiyu. In front of her, even the moon lost its color. Chapter 10:23. Brother Jiang Wang. This letter is as follows. Why are my words so formal? Because I, Jiang Anan, have finished laying my foundation and am now a great meridian-wandering cultivator. You can't coax me like a 3-year-old child. Omitted a bunch of examples. Don't think it's okay to buy me food. I'm not a glutton. If you make me unhappy again, drawn an angry little person here. Next to the angry little person, drawn an adult holding the little person's hand. The adult doesn't have facial features, so the word disobedient is written on his forehead. Today, Uncle Yi praised me again. He said, Sister Qingyu praised me, Senior Marshal Brother Fong praised me. Omitted a bunch of slightly inflated statements. Brother, I haven't been lazy every day. Senior Marshal Sister Wang said, I'll be able to fly very soon. Next time we meet, let me take you flying, okay? Another one. Where did you buy the black fruit that you brought me? I have a friend who also wants to eat it, but I couldn't find it after looking for a long time. Drawn a running little person. Signed, Little Hero Jiang on the clouds, and under the maple. When he received this letter, Jiang Wang was already in Linzi's Mount Xiashan villa. The business of Taishu Corner Tower had already stabilized, so there was no need for him. The Yellow River meeting was approaching day by day, so it was better for him to stay in Linzi during this period. This year, he had written very few letters to Anan. Of course, the main reason was that he hadn't replied much. Because too many things had happened, he couldn't keep up with them. Previously, when he went out to sea, his communication was cut off. Anan would send letters to him regularly, but sometimes the speed of the cloud cranes couldn't catch up with Jiang Wang's speed. After Jiang Wang finished cultivating, he received this cloud crane letter in his quiet room. He read the whole letter with a smile on his face, feeling that the sky outside the window was really good. Anan's letter said she had finished laying the foundation. This was naturally good news. Jiang Wang had used 4 months to finish laying the foundation of the heavenly cycle stars formation. Jiang Anan used the 9 heavens diagram to lay the foundation, which took more than 5 months. The 9 heavens diagram was a foundational array diagram on the same level as the heavenly cycle star array diagram. After all, Jiang Anan was still young. Unlike Jiang Wang, who had already experienced several life and death situations before opening his meridians, his speed was definitely not slow. High Heaven Pavilion really did teach well. After thinking for a while, Jiang Wang picked up the writing brush and wrote a reply. The best sister in the world, Jiang Anan, smiles when she sees the letter. You've already completed the foundation. You're indeed a little genius. He had taken a solid step forward on the path of cultivation. Brother knows that you're always this good. But there is one thing I would like to point out. Greatness was never due to strength, nor was it something that could be flaunted. It is because you are a great person and have done great things that people praise you and describe you as great. You don't have to understand what I'm saying now. You can also ask your elder sister, Qingyu. I believe that she has a more vivid answer for you. Big brother, everything is fine here. The people here are very kind. They just miss you a little. I'm looking forward to the day you can fly with me. Also, which friend of yours? Also, your handwriting doesn't seem to have improved. Is it because you haven't practiced enough? Signed, Hero Jiang. After he finished writing, he looked at the letter again and threw it back to the cloud crane. Then, he took out Yi Qingyu's letter and read it. Yi Qingyu's writing was still as quiet as usual. She picked out a few interesting things about Jiang Anan and described her cultivation level in detail. Then, she mentioned a few things about herself, but it was just a passing remark. Only at the end of the letter, she said, "Fellow Taoist, please think about Anan and don't act rashly." She should know what happened on the Tianya stage, although he didn't know why the news spread so quickly. But thinking about it, it shouldn't be difficult for the Yun nation, which did business all over the world, to get hold of overseas information, especially such a big event that had already spread throughout the coastal waters. Jiang Wang thought for a while, picked up the brush again, and described the cause and effect of the battle on the Tianya stage in detail. Of course, he omitted the very dangerous parts and tried to describe the process as simple as possible. He also couldn't help but exaggerate the support and protection that Qi gave to him, describing the battle on the Tianya stage as a spring outing. Finally, he wrote, "I want to go to the Riverview stage and compete with the heroes of the world. If I am lucky enough to become famous, I will be able to establish a foundation in Qi. At that time, I will be able to bring Anan to my side and won't have to worry about anything else. I have been wandering for more than a year. I often miss my young sister and worry about her. I feel uneasy. I will do my best in this battle. Fellow Taoist, please take care of yourself." Just like how Yi Qingyu's letter had always been signed off as Qingyu on the cloud, Jiang Wang's reply letter was also signed off as Little Jiang under the maple leaf. He let go of Yun He and let him fly away. He stared blankly at the empty window for a while. It wasn't time for Mount Xia to be red all over, but it would probably like the brilliance of the afterglow. He should go and see all 7 of Linzi's scenic spots. As for the 8-tone tea, it wasn't convenient for little Anan to go to those places. He could think of a way to get the shop to send it over. There was also food, drink, and play. Jiang Wang came back to his senses and couldn't help but laugh again. Some people were happy, while others were sad. Some people were smug, while others were anxious. Cheng Geng-sheng, who stayed in Tianfu City and colluded with the Dashing Trading Company's maritime business, was very annoyed. The reason was that the exclusive business of Taishi Corner Tower had a competitor. Of course, it wasn't in Qi. It was in the offshore islands. There was also a great void messenger in the offshore islands. It was said that he was a person named Hua Manlu. This person came from the Kanglan sect and could be said to be unknown. Even though he had joined the Sea Suppression Alliance, he didn't even have a seat. Hua Manlu was even more unknown than the Kanglan sect. Even before this, not many people in the Kanglan sect knew him. What he did after getting the Taishi Corner Tower formed an extremely sharp contrast with what Jiang Wang and Chongxin did. He built the Taishu Corner Tower on the Star Pearl Island where the Kanglan sect was located. This island was located at the southern end of Little Crescent Island. Like the Star of the Moon, so it was named Star Pearl. Hua Manlu didn't charge any fees for this Taishu Corner Tower. He directly established a cooperation with the Sea Suppression Alliance and contributed the Taishu Corner Tower. Any cultivator could use Haisun to exchange for the qualification to enter the Taishu Corner Tower. In this way, more cultivators would go to the Bewildering World to fight, and the cultivators who went to the Bewildering World to fight could come to the Taishu Corner Tower to cultivate through Haisun. This formed a good cycle. Although the Star Pearl Island was far from Tianfu City, and using Haisun to exchange for the qualification to enter the Taishu Corner Tower wasn't as simple and direct as using money. In short, it didn't affect Jiang Wang and Chongshuan's business. But comparison was the most terrible thing. Now many people are scolding you. The shadow guard reported in a low voice. They say you have so much fat on your body that they can't even cut off all their money. They say you're a miser. These scoldings are quite creative, Chung Gung Sheng analyzed professionally, and then he flew into a rage. They don't know shit. If you want to earn Tao origin stones, don't you have to work hard? This is also a very good cycle. Only when the people are rich can the country be strong, and only when the country is strong can it protect the sea and border. How can people who only know how to spout nonsense understand my good intentions? After a while, he smacked his lips and said, "That's not right. Jiang Wang is the Taishu emissary. Why are they scolding me?" The shadow guard shrank back. They say Jiang Qingyang is loyal and righteous, and that his promises are worth 1,000 gold. He treats fame and fortune like dirt, so how can he be so stingy? He must have been busy cultivating and was deceived by others, so he entrusted the wrong person to you, a profiteer, to make a fortune out of him. Chung Gung Sheng. Although he'd always felt that swearing wasn't a high-level way of scolding people, at this moment, he didn't know what else he could use to express his feelings. Chapter 1024. On the 19th day of the 5th lunar month, Jiang Wang personally stood guard outside the Xiao Mountain Villa and welcomed a guest who was not very good-looking. There were many ugly people in the world, but Lien Ke was the only ugly person who could be treated so warmly by Jiang Wang. In the past, Lien Ke had a secretly established contact with Chung Gung Sheng through Jiang Wang to fight for the position of family head. Both sides had to secretly cooperate and borrow each other's strength. Now that Chung Gung Sheng was ahead and Jiang Wang was famous in Qi, there was no need to hide their relationship. Being on good terms with Jiang Wang was a very powerful bargaining chip in Lien Ke's hands. The Lien family of Nanyao was the holy land of weaponsmiths and had some friendship with the owners of famous weapons. However, friendship was something that could be consumed. It was not a conventional force. Because Qi's weapons were in Qiyang and Qiyang's weapons were in Nanyao, the Lien family had some connections in the military. Furthermore, Nanyao's weapons were all over the world, so they could be considered to have a lot of money. However, the Lien family did not have any powerful people. This was a hard problem that could not be erased. Ying Guan, who was still at the peak of the outer sect, had once threatened to exterminate the Lien family. From this, one could see the strength of this family. After all, the powerful people that were hired were not as good as the powerful people that were trained by their own family. If they hired powerful people that they could not control, they would have to worry about the turtle dove taking over the magpie's nest. Sometimes it was easier to invite the devil than to send him away. Lien Ke, Jiang Wang, and Chung Gung Sheng had all discussed before that the reason why the Lien family could not produce powerful people was because of the life tablet system. How could there be a powerful person in the world who could control their life and death? However, they were not the only smart people who could see this point. The reason why the life tablet system still existed was because it was the foundation of the Lien family's stable continuation. It had already been integrated into the flesh and blood of the Lien family. Every elder and every senior member of the family had vested interests in it. If they wanted to change the life tablet system, they would have to challenge the interests of all the senior members of the Lien family. Cutting off one's path to wealth was like killing one's parents. This was a fundamental contradiction that could not be compromised. Even with Lien Ke's determination and Chung Gung Sheng's wisdom, they could only plan slowly. The only way was for Lien Ke to absorb and train a group of people who did not rely on the family system and hated the life card system, such as Lien Xiao, to become the new higher-ups. Only when this part of the power grew up could it be possible to complete the blood exchange from the inside to the outside and from the top to the bottom. On the premise that the Lien family was not destroyed, this holy land of weaponsmiths could be reborn. And the premise of not letting people leech off the family system was to be able to open up a new source of income for them and show them a long-term future. This was not something that could be accomplished overnight. The long-term plan that Chung Gungsheng had personally helped Lien Ke was only focused on the fight for succession. Of course, Lien Ke already had the absolute upper hand in the fight for the right of inheritance. After all, most of the Lien family's connections were in the military, and the Zheng Genjia's influence on the military affairs hall was one of the best in the entire Qi. With the support of the Zheng Genjia's first successor, it would be difficult for Lien Ke to lose. Even if the current patriarch, Lien Zhuping, did not like him, and there were people like Lien Zhuping who were frowning at him, more and more family elders were expressing their support. At present, it was obvious who could bring more benefits to them. After getting in touch with the Zheng Genjia, the soldiers who used to freeload and take while eating had decreased a lot. Of course, once Lien Ke exposed his idea of abolishing the lifecard system, the family elders who supported him now would all become his opponents. Here's what you want. As soon as they met, Lien Ke took out a cast iron box and handed it directly to Jiang Wang. He was still as straightforward as ever, other than hiding his dream of rebuilding the Lien family in the bottom of his heart. He could not hold back most of the time. This iron box was also very ugly. The corners were not even smoothed out, and it was obvious that it was knocked out. It was impossible that someone would use it to hold a gift. Jiang Wang did not mind. He turned around and led Lien Ke into the courtyard while opening the iron box. Inside the cast iron box, there were 5 hollow, translucent spikes. These 5 spikes were beautifully made. The raw material came from the special bone spikes that Jiang Wang obtained from killing members of the sea race in the bewildering world. That member of the sea race was not strong, but the bone spikes he left behind were very rare. Jiang Wang looked at them and felt very satisfied. You still know what it means to look good. Yin Fu was a fastidious person. You should not despise them because they did not look good, Lien Ke said in a muffled voice. I don't know much about this type of artifact. I asked an uncle to help me make it. He explained, this set of 5 elements restriction alls will restrict fire elemental energy when it is injected with fire elemental energy and water elemental energy when it is injected with water elemental energy. It fully utilizes the characteristics of the raw material and can absorb all the elemental energy within a radius of 5 miles in one breath. Of course, there's an upper limit. The upper limit depends on the limit of the elemental energy that the alls can absorb. Outside the tower, Jiang Wang asked. Lien Ke nodded. More or less. How much is it worth? Jiang Wang asked again. How does it compare to talismans like the water forbidding talismans in the outside tower? Lien Ke was an honest person. He said, truthfully, the price of talismans is a bit exaggerated now. It's only worth about 300 to 400 pieces. However, according to its true value, it's worth at least 1,000 water forbidding talismans. Jiang Wang nodded. No matter what, it was already good enough that it could match the value of the box of talismans and not cause Yin Fu to suffer a loss. He played with the alls while praising. Your uncle's craftsmanship is really good. The price of hiring him will be increased by 10%. Later, you can ask someone to calculate it directly with the Dushing Trading Company. Dushing Trading Firm was quite rich now, so Jiang Wang's confidence in his words had increased a lot. Lien Ke did not stand on ceremony. Deal. He then looked at the Sauvignon Blanc on Jiang Wang's waist and grinned. You raised it well. As the most talented weaponsmith in the Lien family and the creator of the Sauvignon Blanc, he could naturally see the changes in the sword at a glance. Jiang Wang took it off and handed it to him. Take a look. Lien Ke held it with both hands as if he was holding a child. He cherished it very much. The Sauvignon Blanc did not reject Lien Ke and did not make a sound. This sword was made by him, and he became famous because of it. Naturally, it was fate that brought him here. Great, great. He was grinning from ear to ear. This is the world's most famous sword. Previously, Lien Ke had specially designed a nurturing method for the Sauvignon Blanc. All this time, Jiang Wang had strictly followed that method to nurture the sword without stopping. This was also an important reason why the Sauvignon Blanc could give birth to a sword spirit so quickly. Lien Ke's nurturing method mainly used the divine power seeds. Now that Jiang Wang had 3 divine power seeds, he could rotate them endlessly. Naturally, he nurtured the sword better. The man nurtured the sword, and the sword nurtured the man. It's all thanks to your nurturing method. Jiang Wang smiled. You came at the right time today. Coincidentally, a friend of mine in Baya wants to invite me for a drink. Let's go together. No matter how badly NK was at socializing with people, he knew that Jiang Wang was trying to pull strings for him. It was needless to say how important the relationship with the capital city patrol office was in the Qi department. He had the dream of rebuilding the Lin family, so he could not only focus on weaponsmithing. Okay, a polite smile immediately appeared on Lin K's ugly face. Chapter 1025. Zheng Xiaoming finally found an opportunity to visit Jiang Wang and treat him to a meal. Jiang Wang mediated the atmosphere and introduced Zheng Xiaoming and Lin Ke to each other. After the meal, all the guests were happy. Zheng Xiaoming wanted to make friends with Jiang Wang, so he was very friendly to his old friend. Lin Ke also needed to build his influence and confirm his identity as the young master of the Lin family. Of course, how they could get along would depend on their future cooperation. On the 20th of May, the list of candidates for the Yellow River meeting was submitted to the emperor. There was no need to keep it secret, so the list was already known in the afternoon. The 3 candidates for the Inner Mansion realm were Jiang Wang, the young master of the Lei family, Lei Zhanxian, and the deputy general of the Lightning Prison Army, Cui Ju. The 3 candidates for the Outer Mansion realm were Bao Buizhao, the eldest son of Count Shuofeng, Xie Baoshu, the nephew of Xie Huaian, and Chao Yu, the general of the Winter Silence Army. Bai Ji, Mo Lianxing, and Bi Wu, Yang Jing were not qualified to be on the list. As for the unrestricted finals for those under 30 years old, the Political Affairs Hall only submitted one name, Ji Zhaonan. He had no position, no nobility, and was not famous because he rarely appeared in the country. He only had one identity, the second disciple of the military god. The military god of the Qi, Jiang Mingxiong, had 3 disciples. His first disciple, Chun Ziqing, inherited his military strategy. His last disciple, Wang Yiwu, inherited his bravery. The former was known as the military advisor of the 9 soldiers. He had trained in each of the 9 soldiers of the Qi, and all the proud soldiers were convinced by him. The latter fought for the first place in every realm. Both of them were very famous. Only the second disciple, Ji Zhaonan, was rarely known. However, since the Political Affairs Hall only submitted one name, it was impossible that the Political Affairs Hall was so arrogant that they did not give the Qi Emperor a chance to choose. It was because everyone in the Political Affairs Hall, from the state minister to the 9 ministers of the Qi, recognized him as the first cultivator under 30 years old in Qi. He was an indisputable candidate. Only then did they dare to send him to the Qi Emperor alone. One could imagine how powerful Ji Zhaonan was from this point alone. Just how much attention was paid to the Yellow River meeting. On Qi's side, Emperor Qi had yet to decide on the final candidate. The Political Affairs Hall had only sent over a list of candidates. The people on the list had already become very popular. Ever since this list of names was sent out, the number of people who came to visit the Xia Mountain Villa almost broke the doorway. Jiang Wang had no choice but to announce his closed-door training early to avoid offending too many people. At the same time, he sent an urgent message to Cheng Gengsheng in the Great Illusionary Land, asking him to come back and deal with these social matters. After all, some of the visitors were closely related to the development of the Dushing Trading Company. It wouldn't be nice to just go into seclusion and not see them. Cheng Gengsheng was filled with resentment. New and old grudges welled up in his heart. He ridiculed Jiang Wang with dozens of paper cranes. In the end, he put down his business in Tianfu City and returned to Linzi. Of course, Jiang Wang did not open any of the fat paper cranes in the Great Illusionary Land. It was easy to guess that it wouldn't be anything good. If there really was something important, the fatty would meet him in the galaxy space. Therefore, when they met in Lindsay, the two of them were very intimate. One was already comfortable with the scolding, while the other didn't even look at what the other was scolding. After the well-versed Chongxian Fat returned to Lindsay, the world immediately became peaceful. What was an incomparably troublesome matter for Jiang Wang was nothing to Cheng Gongsheng. Over the next few days, the guests from all over the world were served very comfortably. Of course, he couldn't help but chatter endlessly in Jiang Wang's ear. He said things like, "I'm a noble son of the Chongqing clan, the future Marquis Baoang, but I have to guard the door for you." Jiang Wang suddenly remembered something and interrupted. "That's right, before I went to the Chongqian clan's territory, Bao Zhongqing sent a subordinate to find me. I don't know what it was about, but you said to be wary of this person, so I ignored him." "He sent a subordinate to find you?" Cheng Gongsheng asked. "Yes, that overturning the sea hand." At that time, he didn't pay attention to it, but there was no follow-up on this matter, which really puzzled him. He didn't know why the other party contacted him, but it didn't seem sincere. He didn't think that he could have anything to do with Bao Zhongqing. The Zhonginjia and the Bao clan were political enemies. He and Cheng Gongsheng were famous for advancing and retreating together. Cheng Gongsheng seemed to have understood. He shook his head and said, "Pockmarked Bao didn't mean to be rude. He's not bad at all. It's just that he couldn't find you in person." "Why do you say that?" Jiang Wang asked. "Why do you think he's looking for you?" Cheng Gongsheng said with a smile, "The answer should be at the Yellow River meeting." Jiang Wang frowned. "I'm getting more and more confused." "You're so stupid." Cheng Gongsheng humiliated him mercilessly. "No wonder people say that you're deceived. You're really easy to deceive." Jiang Wang was even more confused. "Who did I get deceived by?" Cheng Gongsheng obviously couldn't expose his own shortcomings. He sneered, avoided the topic, and said, "You only care about your own territory? Didn't you notice Bao Boizhao on the list?" At that time, pockmarked Bao didn't want to find you. He wanted to find Yin Fu through you. The fat man only heard a few words, but he seemed to be more in touch with the situation than Jiang Wang. He wanted to use Yin Fu's relationship to stop Bao Boizhao from being on the list. If he visited you in person, his purpose would be too obvious, so he could only ask his subordinate to invite you. Also, he couldn't say it out loud. After all, it wouldn't be good if he stopped his brother from becoming famous. "I think you're cold?" "A little." Jiang Wang touched his nose. He had to admit that this fat man was really smart. Cheng Gongsheng laughed again. "If you went to see him at that time, you would have been able to get a lot of benefits. However, you can't count on Yin Fu for the quota for the Yellow River meeting." "Why?" Compared to Cheng Gongsheng, Jiang Wang felt that he wasn't very smart. He couldn't understand this, and he couldn't understand that. Cheng Gongsheng asked, "Do you know why pockmarked Bao didn't look for you after that?" "How would I know if you don't tell me?" Jiang Wang was angry. "Ha ha ha." Cheng Gongsheng was finally happy, and he laughed. No matter how influential the Yin family is in the political hall, they can only get one quota for the Yellow River meeting. It's not that they can't do more, but that they can't do more. The Yin family is meddling in the affairs of the country. What are you trying to do? Yin Fu is a clear-headed person. He won't do anything stupid. Jiang Wang suddenly understood. Yin Fu helped me get on the list, so he can't push Bao Boizhao down. And vice versa? Sigh. Cheng Gongsheng leaned back lazily. "Look, even a pig like pockmarked Bao could see it clearly, but you... TSK. Isn't it normal for people like us who are clean and honest to not see through these schemes?" Jiang Wang retorted angrily. Cheng Gongsheng laughed loudly. "This is the first time I've heard someone describe stupidity in such a refreshing way. It's not difficult for people with a little brain to understand, huh? As for why Bao Boizhao wanted to get on the list, and why Bao Zhongqing tried to stop him, it was obvious from the number of people who came to visit Jiang Wang. Regardless of whether they could go to the meeting of the Yellow River or not, as long as they were on the list, they would be among the top 3 in the state of Qi, as recommended by the Political Affairs Hall. It was very significant. However, the analysis was very reasonable. Jiang Wang wouldn't let them ridicule him again and again. He turned to look at Jiang Shihu with a gentle smile. "Miss Jiang Shihu, could you please leave for a moment? I think I need to talk to Chongxian Fat alone." Cheng Gongsheng snorted. How could Jiang Shihu? Oh, Jiang Shihu? Looking at Jiang Shihu, who was determined to leave, he quickly got up. Jiang Shihu, wait. First, Jiang Wang pushed him back into the chair and stopped him from saying, "Don't go." They had a good chat that day. At least Jiang Wang was happy. Chapter 10:26. 23rd of the 5th month in the 55th year of the Yuanfeng era. This was a day of great significance. The Emperor of Qi would personally visit the Imperial Ancestral Temple to pay his respects to the late emperor. Then, before the ancestors of the Zhang dynasty, he would select talents for the country and personally encourage them to participate in the gathering of the Yellow River. The Tianjiao of the country would also have to display his outstanding talent before the emperor and the people of the world to prove that he was qualified to represent Qi. At that time, all of the officials and the royal family would be present. The elders above 100 years old in Linzi City and the 99 families randomly selected by the imperial clan court would be present to observe the event. It was called the Ceremony of the Grandmaster. The Ceremony of the Grandmaster was meant to be used by everyone. When the emperor went on a crusade, there would be etiquette for the military. This was especially so when the emperor personally went on a crusade. In other words, the entire Qi treated the gathering of the Yellow River as a war. They treated it as a war of nations. Everything that happened during the ceremony would be recorded by the historians. The results of the Ceremony of the Grandmaster, such as the selection of the inner sanctum and the victory of the outer sanctum, would be announced to the entire Linzi city. This would prove that this was indeed the Tianjiao that the entire Qi recognized. They could really represent Qi and compete with the heroes of the world. It was only at this moment that Jiang Wang realized that the gathering of the Yellow River was more important than he had imagined. It wasn't just the title of the number one Tianjiao in the world. That was right. That was why Zhuge Guangshu said that the number one Qi and the number one Shu were not the number one. Only the number one in the gathering of the Yellow River was the true number one in the world. There must be something worthy of being the number one in the world in the gathering of the Yellow River. That was why the Tianjiao of the other countries were willing to go all out. That was why the title of number one in the world was so convincing. Since Jiang Wang was the one who took the initiative to participate in the gathering of the Yellow River, Cheng Gengsheng and Yin Fu thought that he knew the meaning of the gathering of the Yellow River, so they didn't explain it to him. So far, Jiang Wang's understanding of the gathering of the Yellow River was limited to the number one in the world and the division of territory. He didn't even know how the division of territory was done. However, it wasn't a big deal. No matter what they fought for, no matter how important the Yellow River Conference was, Jiang Wang had already decided to participate, so he would not back down. The more important, the better. The more important it was, the more things they could fight for. The more important it was, the more it was worth it. As the Tianjiao of the inner mansion, Jiang Wang left with Cheng Gengsheng in a palanquin before dawn. With Cheng Gengsheng's family background, he was naturally a member of the audience, and he even brought 14 with him. Fortunately, the sedan bearers were all transcendent cultivators. Otherwise, it would have been really difficult to carry the two people with their fat bodies and iron armor. The sedan chair of Marquis Boang's mansion was of a very high standard. Jiang Wang, who was sitting in the sedan chair, was one of the main characters of this year's master ceremony. The imperial court had specially issued a nameplate, which was now hanging in front of the sedan chair. The palanquin was carried all the way to the imperial ancestral temple. This year's master ceremony would begin in the square in front of the imperial ancestral temple. She was very popular with martial artists. In history, when they conquered countries, they had the tradition of holding prisoners or offering their heads in front of the imperial ancestral temple. It was not against the rules to hold the master's ceremony in front of the imperial ancestral temple. Nay, Jiang Wang's palanquin had not yet stopped. Jiang Wang was still resting with his eyes closed. Suddenly, a horse neighed. The horse's hooves stomped on the ground like a drum, and it only stopped abruptly when it reached the front of the palanquin. Good heavens, who was this? Riding a horse near the imperial ancestral temple? Although they had not reached the imperial ancestral temple, it was not disrespectful. But this was a little too arrogant. Jiang Wang was still analyzing the sound. Then, he heard the person ask, "Are you Jiang Wang?" It was not very fierce. The nameplate was hanging outside the palanquin, and there was no way to hide. Jiang Wang was sitting on the left side of the palanquin. Although it was quite a big palanquin, it was still squeezed to the side by Chongxian Fat and the heavy armor 14. When he heard this sound, he lifted half of the palanquin curtain and looked outside. What he saw was a young man who could be considered handsome, but was unusually high profile. He saw that this person was wearing a magnificent brocade robe and was riding a tall horse. The horse was tied with colored balls and fluttering red silk. He simply looked like a bridegroom. There was a nameplate hanging on the horse's neck, indicating that it was one of the main characters today. However, it just so happened that the nameplate was turned inside, so the name on the front could not be seen. He looked like a son of a military family, but Jiang Wang guessed that he might be from a family of civil officials. Speaking of which, there was a very interesting phenomenon that Jiang Wang himself concluded. Nowadays, the young masters in Linzi City, generally speaking, were from families of civil officials. They like to ride horses to show off their masculinity. Those from families of generals like to ride palanquins to show off their elegance. In short, all of them wanted to rely on being well-versed in civil and military affairs. Of course, Cheng Gengsheng's reason for riding the palanquin had nothing to do with this. He just wanted to be comfortable. "You are?" Jiang Wang asked politely. "Huh." The newcomer sneered. "Let me teach you a lesson. Gilded gold is not real gold. If you cheat, you will inevitably make a fool of yourself." Jiang Wang was speechless. This was inexplicable. Jiang Wang looked back at Cheng Gengsheng and asked with his eyes, "What's wrong with this person?" Cheng Gengsheng didn't waste time talking nonsense. He directly squeezed forward, pulled open the other side of the palanquin curtain, stuck his head out, and roared, "Get lost!" Chongxian Fat's roar was really too loud. It was like a sudden clap of thunder rolling out in waves. It was as if thousands of troops and horses were going to kill his mother. It scared the horse that provoked this person so much that it trembled. Fortunately, this horse's bloodline was extraordinary. In the end, it didn't embarrass itself further. Jiang Wang noticed that many people in the vicinity were looking over in surprise. One had to know that those who could come to the Imperial Ancestral Temple today, other than the lucky commoners and the elderly, were all either rich or noble. There weren't many things that could make them lose their composure. Cursing in the streets near the Imperial Ancestral Temple. Was this person crazy because he wanted to be in the history books? Those people who were either openly or covertly gathering their gazes made the person who blocked the palanquin very uneasy. He obviously didn't expect Cheng Gengsheng to be in the palanquin as well. He also didn't expect Cheng Gengsheng to roar angrily at the slightest disagreement. If this really happened, how would it end? This place wasn't far from the Imperial Ancestral Temple. His face turned green and white. In the end, he couldn't argue with Cheng Gengsheng. He said fiercely, "Jiang Qingyang, you better go to the Yellow River meeting. I'll give you good guidance on the way." He turned around and rode his horse away. Jiang Wang was speechless for a while. Even someone as cultured as him wanted to curse out loud. "You provoke me for no reason, but I didn't say a word. The person who scolded you was Chongxian Fat. It's fine if you don't look for him, but you said something fierce before you left, and you even said it to me. Do I, Jiang Qingyang, have the words 'easy to bully' written on my face?" Judging from his tone, he should be a participant of the other two matches. In the outer tower and the unrestricted field under 30, Jiang Wang only knew Bao Buzhao. There was a conflict. Could this be Ji Zhaonan, the second disciple of the god of war? Why does he look like a stupid roe deer? No, it shouldn't be. If Chi's number one person under 30 was so careless, then everyone shouldn't go and embarrass themselves. Jiang Wang sat back in the palanquin and cast a questioning look at Cheng Gengsheng. "Who did you offend this time? Why are you looking at me?" Compared to Jiang Wang's ignorance, Cheng Gengsheng naturally knew what was going on. He only curled his lips. Go complain to your family. Chapter 10:27. How is it related to him again? Jiang Wang asked curiously. Chung Gung Sheng lowered the curtain and said slowly, "That person is the nephew of Xie Huaiyan. His name is Xie Baoshu. Xie Huaiyan doesn't have any children. He only has one nephew who is a bit promising, so he thinks highly of him." How is that just a bit promising? Anyone who can participate in the Yellow River Gathering is definitely not weak. It's just that his brain doesn't seem too good. And then, Jiang Wang asked. Chung Gung Sheng suddenly smiled slyly. Don't you think that the name Xie Bao Shu matches a certain name? This was especially meaningful. Matches a certain name? Xie Bao Shu. Jiang Wang's mind raced, and he suddenly thought of a name. Windingland? Chung Gung Sheng laughed. Xie Bao Shu thinks so too. Jiang Wang finally figured it out. Xie Bao Shu is interested in Miss Wan, but Miss Wan is in love with the dog, Brother Yin, and they're already engaged. Xie Bao Shu's love turned into hate, and he's taking it out on me? You followed Yin Fu's path and got on the list of inner mansion cultivators. Others might not know, but his uncle is the imperial advisor. It's impossible that he doesn't know. Chung Gung Sheng gloated. If he doesn't find trouble with you, who else can he find trouble with? If this matter was simply understood as a matter of jealousy, then one would be looking down on the Xie family's upbringing. Did Xie Baoshu really think that Jiang Wang was just a facade, and that he got on the list by pulling strings? Of course not. His uncle was the imperial advisor, so he knew how serious this matter was. If Jiang Wang didn't have the battle record of defeating Wang Yiwu in the same realm and suppressing other cultivators in the same realm as him, Yin Fu wouldn't have been able to get his name on the list no matter how hard he tried. There was a prime minister in the political affairs hall, 9 ministers in the imperial court, and so many members of the royal family in Qi, who didn't need help. However, when it came to something like the Yellow River Gathering, not everyone could do it. Being number one in a certain city or county meant nothing to him. At the very least, it had to be a Tianjiao within Qi. However, he still wanted to provoke him like this. It was only to ruin Yin Fu's reputation. In other words, if Jiang Wang's performance was really bad this time, no matter how innocent Yin Fu was, he would not be innocent anymore. Chung Gung Sheng also knew that there was no possibility of reconciliation between Xie Baoshu and Yin Fu. He couldn't ask Jiang Wang to cut ties with Yin Fu, or ask Yin Fu to break off the engagement, right? Therefore, he didn't give Xie Baoshu a chance to show off. He lifted the curtain and shed all pretense of cordiality. Xie Baoshu could either leave with his tail between his legs, or make a fuss and let the big shots judge. At that time, it wouldn't look good for anyone. Anyway, Chung Gung Sheng was used to being shameless. He didn't need to participate in the Yellow River Gathering, so it didn't matter. However, Xie Baoshu might not be able to do it. The final result was not out of his expectations. Xie Baoshu came with his head held high and left with his eyes lowered. These calculations were all in his heart, but Jiang Wang could naturally figure it out with just a slight hint. Interesting. He chuckled softly and didn't say anything else. It was difficult for him to win against an outer sect cultivator who could get on the Yellow River Gathering list with his inner mansion cultivation. However, there was still a long way to go. He might as well think about it later. After all, he had to give Brother Bao Shu, who loved to ride a horse, a chance to teach. Xie Bao Shu, who was shocked by the scolding, became angrier and angrier after he left. Xie Bao Shu was so extraordinary. Where did he fall short? In terms of family background, he was the nephew of the Minister of Imperial Affairs. His uncle, Xie Huaiyan, had no son, so he was the young master of the Xie family. In terms of appearance, he was a man of striking appearance, handsome and confident. In terms of cultivation, he was an outer sect cultivator who was qualified to participate in the Yellow River Gathering. He was one of the top figures in Qi. Besides, Xie Baoshu and Tinglan were a match made in heaven. Even if these two names were put in front of you, Beidou, you wouldn't be able to calculate the word no, right? In the end, when Yin Yu chose Yin Fu, what was so great about the Yin family? Didn't they just have some stinky money? As far as the eye could see, no one was outstanding. It was all because of the previous prime minister. Of course, the previous prime minister was quite amazing. But wasn't he the previous prime minister? The current prime minister's surname was Jiang. Xie Baoshu had enough reason to be dissatisfied with Yin Fu. He spared no effort to attack Yin Fu. Today, when he saw the nameplate on the sedan chair, he knew that it was the Jiang Wang that Yin Fu had specially sent the invitation card. He thought for a moment and pulled the reins to come over. He only wanted to attack Jiang Wang and frustrate him. It would be best if he could make him lose points. He didn't expect the Zhenggenjia to be such a fatty. How despicable. You even rode in the same sedan chair as Jiang Wang when he was the main character. Those with the surname Chongxian were indeed Ba. Xie Baoshu spat fiercely and rode his horse away. The small conflict that happened near the Imperial Ancestral Temple didn't cause much of a stir. Naturally, many people noticed it, but they pretended not to see it. It was because both sides had different identities. They couldn't afford to offend them. One side was from the Minister of Imperial Affairs, Xie Huayan's Xie family. The other side was even more ruthless. They were from the top family, Zhenggenjia. It was needless to say how good Xie Huayan was to Xie Baoshu. Xiong, too, was a very protective person. For his nephew, Cheng Gongsheng, he even dared to draw his sword against the army god. People below the level of Dongjin had to weigh their own weight before looking for trouble. They had to see how many swords they could take. Of course, the most important thing was that on this day, no matter what happened, they had to make concessions for this ceremony of the Great Master. The 99 lucky households, men, women, old and young, all brought their families and stood in their own seats. They stood on the platform that was temporarily built on the left side. They were the pure audience. They stood higher than the civil and military officials. It was a rare moment in their lives. Of course, it was said that they would be randomly chosen from the people who signed up. They had to be people whose ancestors had been pure for generations. They had already been taught etiquette. In this kind of situation, there was no possibility of trouble. If anything happened, Zheng Shi's position as the Northern Yamen's commandant would be over. The civil and military officials participating in the ceremony of the Great Master had all arrived at the square at this time. They stood in line according to their official ranks. Only those old people who had no cultivation base and were over 100 years old each had a soft chair. They sat comfortably on the stairs to the left in front of the 99 families. They were in the most spacious seats, enjoying the best view, and they were also served by a personal attendant. It was an auspicious thing to be able to enjoy a long life without cultivation. Even on normal days, the imperial court had to send rice and cloth 3 to 5 days. If one counted carefully, there were only 15 soft chairs. It wasn't that there were only these 100-year-old people in Linzi City. Of course, every family had been notified. However, there weren't many people of this age who could move. In the end, there were only 15 people present. At this time, Jiang Wang had been led to a side hall to wait. As one of the main characters today, he was waiting for the ceremony of the Great Master to begin. The guard who led him here didn't say anything, so he didn't say anything. This should be the side hall where the generations of meritorious officials and generals accompanied the deceased. He couldn't enter, so he didn't know who was worshiping in this side hall. He didn't see anyone else competing for a spot. They should be scattered in different places. In short, the ceremony of the Great Master hadn't started yet, but it was already very solemn. Chapter 1028. The civil and military officials lined up and waited in the square. The commoners who came to watch the ceremony were all on the left side of the platform. Although they were all standing, there was an array that could help them recover their energy. A platform was also built on the right side of the square, but it was empty. There was no audience. After the officials finished praying, they would stand on the platform to watch the ceremony. Only at that time, descendants of aristocratic families like Zhong Xiansheng, who were not qualified to participate in the master ceremony, but were qualified to attend the ceremony, could enter the venue. The center of the square would be the stage for those young people. Opposite the main entrance of the Imperial Ancestral Temple, an altar was built overnight. Naturally, it was the supreme seat. It meant that the Emperor of Deqi and the previous emperors of Deqi would celebrate the heroes of Deqi. The dragon and phoenix chairs of the highest point were already prepared, but they were empty. The Emperor of Deqi was praying in the imperial ancestral temple. The altar extended to the middle section. There were few tables on the platform. Those were the seats for the princes and princesses. Below that was another section of the Pill Emperor, and in the plaza, Jiang Wang didn't even notice how complicated and high the standards of the entire master ceremony were. He sat quietly and closed his eyes to rest. His posture was upright, and his breathing was long. He wasn't the only one who had this kind of calmness. Everyone who could participate in the competition would have this kind of calmness. Even Xie Baoshu, who was worried about Wen Tinglan, knew very well what was the most important thing. To others, this ceremony of the great master was just a sacrificial offering. To the main characters, it might decide their lives. It would take many years for him to catch up to the distance he could take with this step. The three strongest people in Qi were very different from the number one in Qi. Also, only the number one in Qi was qualified to fight for it. Number one in the world. Imperial Ancestral Temple, Emperor Wu Temple. Emperor Wu of Qi and the founder of Qi were the only two emperors in the history of Qi to have a main hall in the Imperial Ancestral Temple. The Emperor of Qi, who borrowed 30,000 troops as a hostage, won 37 battles, and became the overlord of Qi, was the emperor that the Qi emperor respected the most. The Emperor of Deqi looked at the golden body of the emperor in front of him quietly. There was no emotion on his face. It was Emperor Wu of Qi who saved Deqi and established Deqi as the overlord of Deqi. However, he was the one who truly allowed Qi to become the most powerful person in the world. Thinking about it, if he was unlucky, there should be a main hall for him in this imperial ancestral temple. But was that enough? The quota for the political affairs hall has already been handed over. The Emperor of Deqi asked faintly, "Do you think that I should complicate matters?" At this moment, only the Crown Prince of Deqi, the Crown Prince of the Eastern Palace, Jiang Wuhua, could accompany the ceremony in the martial Emperor's shrine. The other princes and princesses were not qualified to do so. Jiang Wuhua, who looked very simple and honest, stood respectfully to the side and said politely, "Father, you have your own heart. No matter what decision you make, you have your own reasons." Compared to the valiant Jiang Wuyo, the devilishly handsome Jiang Wuqi, and the extraordinarily handsome Jiang Wuhua, Crown Prince Jiang Wuhua did not even look outstanding. Just like his answer now, it was not outstanding, and no one could find any fault with it. If Jiang Wuqi was present, he would at least say, "The Emperor's order is the right thing to do. I have not heard of any other orders." However, the Crown Prince had his good points. The Emperor of Deqi did not comment. He turned around and walked out. A eunuch shouted, "Move." Jiang Wuhua waited until the Emperor was almost out of the door before he stood up and followed. He was respectful and meticulous in his actions. How could the political affairs hall not know about Deqi and Tianjiao? For example, there should be Wang Yiwu in the inner palace state. However, the military law was like a mountain. Since he had been sentenced to death row for 3 years, he could not return to Linzi. The political affairs hall did not recommend him because they respected the military law. In terms of the number 1 inner palace state, how could it not be related to Cheng Xuan's talent? Yu Beidu's words of stealing the talent of his peers had been passed down for so many years. Hu and Qi did not know about it. However, no one in the political affairs hall mentioned it, because it was the Emperor of Deqi who personally ordered young Ganzuan to go into seclusion at Jixia Academy. This was the Emperor's authority. The Emperor's authority was his own. After an unknown period of time, Jiang Wang did not listen to the sounds outside, nor did he feel the passage of time. He was just silently recuperating and cultivating as usual. Then a guard came over. "Lord Jiang, please." Jiang Wang stood up and said gently, "Please lead the way." Today, he was wearing a clean and proper green martial attire. His long hair was tied up simply, and he still did not have any extra accessories on his body. There was only an ordinary white jade pendant hanging from his waist. He held it in his hand. His head was held high, and his footsteps were calm and steady. Gazes have weight. Jiang Wang had a deep impression of this sentence. Later, he saw Wang Ao shatter the Blood King's gaze with his own eyes. However, it seemed that today, he truly felt the weight of gazes. When he followed the guard who led the way and walked into the huge square paved with white flagstones, countless gazes in the square gathered on him. On the left platform were the commoners, and on the right platform were the nobles. Cheng Gung Sheng, Yin Fu, and the others should also be there. Jiang Wang did not look carefully. The Emperor of Deqi must be sitting at the highest point above the Pill Emperor, and he could not look up at this time. Thinking about it, Huaying Palace Master Zhang Wuyo should also be in that direction. Innumerable gazes and pressure were innumerable. On the Tinya stage, he had been the center of attention, but at that time, he was not in the mood to care. Moreover, the weight that those people represented was far from what it was now. Therefore, only now did he feel the attention of the world. It was an interesting experience. Jiang Wang had nothing to be nervous about. Holding his sword, he began to size up the protagonists who were about to enter the square at the same time as him. It was naturally not rude to observe the opponents. There were only 7 people standing in the huge square, divided into 3 rows. They seemed small and extremely radiant. Jiang Wang was in the left row, and there were 3 people in this row. Lei Zhanxian was standing in the front, closest to the Pill Emperor. Needless to say, they were old friends. Jiang Wang's focus was on Cui Ju. He stood at the back of this row, which was close to the Imperial Ancestral Temple. However, not much could be seen. His face was cold, and his eyes were straight. He stood like a javelin and had the temperament of a soldier. Jiang Wang stood between Lei Zhanxian and Cui Ju. He looked to the right, and the first person he saw was Ji Zhaonan, this second disciple of the god of war, who rarely appeared in the country, stood alone in the middle of the square. Because there was no opponent, he stood alone. It just separated the outer building and the inner building. Before seeing him, he did not know who he was. After seeing him, he felt that it was natural for him to stand here. He was truly a rare person. He was dressed in silver armor and white robes. He held a long spear as white as snow. His long hair was tied behind his head, and only a strand of hair fell in front of his forehead. His eyes were like cold stars, and his eyebrows were like frost blades. There was a very faint smell of blood on his body, which was a trace that could not be removed after countless killings. He, on the other hand, looked spotless. Cheng Gung Sheng had once introduced the name of the spear, Splendid. The name of the spear, Wu Shuang. Chapter 10:29. His intuition told him that this was a cold-hearted person. But when Jiang Wang looked over, the person turned around and smiled brightly. He didn't seem to be the kind of person who kept people away. Jiang Wang smiled and nodded in greeting. To Ji Zhaonan's right stood the 3 people competing for the outer tower spot. From front to back, they were Bao Buizhao, Xie Baoshu, and Chao Yu. Jiang Wang was familiar with Bao Buizhao. He was much more handsome than his brother Bao Zhongqing. Xie Baoshu had just met him. It was better not to mention him. Chao Yu, who was from the Winter Solitude Army, was a woman. Jiang Wang didn't expect this because her name didn't sound feminine at all. Her medium-length hair was tied into a braid and hung straight behind her head. Her face was a little neutral. Above her sat the Emperor and Empress of Deqi. The Wind Throne was slightly lower than the Dragon Throne. Further down were a few steps. These were the seats for the princes and princesses. There weren't many princes and princesses who could attend this kind of occasion. Crown Prince Jiang Wuhua, Huaying Palace Master Jiang Wuyo, Heart-Nurturing Palace Master Jiang Wuqi, and Longevity Palace Master Jiang Wuhua sat on the left, while Jiang Wuyo, as the eldest sister, sat on the right. Behind them sat Jiang Wuxia and Jiang Wuqi. Jiang Wuhua was wearing the Crown Prince's uniform and sat upright. Jiang Wuyo was wearing a frost-colored martial attire. She tilted her head and looked at the people in the square. Jiang Wuxia was casually draped in a brocade robe. She was the most relaxed of them all. A smile hung on the corner of her mouth. From time to time, she would pick up a snow grain fruit from the fruit plate in front of her. It was a fruit the size of a grape. If it weren't for the fact that they were in front of the emperor and couldn't be too unrestrained, there would be a beauty massaging his shoulders and legs. Jiang Wuqi was wearing a white fox fur coat. Her pale face was smiling, and her sitting posture was very proper. Except for Jiang Wuhua, the other three palace masters did not wear the ceremonial robes. Compared to the crown prince's ceremonial robes, their palace masters' ceremonial robes were undoubtedly a level lower. They were worn as if they were reminding others. They were all intentionally downplaying this gap. It was hard to say if Jiang Wuhua was deliberately increasing the gap between them. In any case, he had always dressed according to the occasion, so there would be no mistakes. It was reasonable for him to wear the crown prince's uniform at the master's ceremony. The time was not up yet. The officials of the Ministry of Rites were sprinkling clear water on the square. This was to wash away the dirt and remove the hidden dangers to ensure the fairness of the martial arts competition. Emperor Qi suddenly said, "Wu Qi, come over here and talk." Jiang Wuhua smiled. Jiang Wuyo was still looking at the Tianjiao in the square, while Jiang Wuxia continued to eat the snow-striped fruit. None of them seemed to have heard the sound. Jiang Wuqi stood up and left his seat. He walked up a few steps unhurriedly to the cheese dragon throne and bowed. "Father." He then bowed to Daki Empress's Mother. Emperor Qi had 9 daughters and 17 sons. Other than Crown Prince Jiang Wuhua, there were 3 others who were seen as qualified to be the next crown prince. However, only Jiang Wuqi was called over to talk to him at this moment. It was obvious that he doted on him. Empress, he smiled and nodded in response. Other than the eunuchs and palace maids, the people sitting on the throne were all members of the imperial family. Emperor Qi was also very casual. "Let me ask you, holding the master ceremony in front of the imperial ancestral temple and deciding to leave the country of Tianjiao is a gathering of the strong. Why did you invite these old people who can't even stand properly, and these 99 ordinary people who have no cultivation?" Cough, cough. Jiang Wuqi stopped coughing and smiled calmly. Most people in this world are ordinary when they are born. Before they become gods, everyone will grow old one day. Father, the people you invited are the beginning and the end. No matter where we go or where we stand, we should remember the path we came from and the path we will take. This is the case for people in the country. Emperor Qi was obviously very satisfied with this answer. He even reached out and gently stroked his back. "Are you all right?" Jiang Wuqi replied softly, "I'm fine." Emperor Qi ordered again. "Bring a chair over and let little 11 sit down. He can't stand being tired." The red-robed eunuch Han Ling personally brought over a chair cushioned with cloud velvet and placed it in front of the dragon throne. Jiang Wuqi sat down with his hands on his knees. "Empress," he said from the side, "I have a top-quality wandering dragon ginseng in my palace. It might be good for you. I'll have someone send it to the Longevity Palace later." Jiang Wuqi didn't refuse. He stood up and bowed respectfully. "Aken thanks Mother for her concern." Empress, he smiled slightly and didn't say anything else. When Jiang Wuqi sat down again, Emperor Qi suddenly raised his voice with a mischievous smile. "Hey, what are you looking at, Wuyo?" The Emperor's grace was as vast as the sea. He rarely showed his emotions. Only this mischievous smile at this moment seemed to have temporarily pulled him down from the supreme throne, giving him a bit of the reality of the role of a father. Jiang Wuyo turned around and smiled generously. "Look at me, Qi, Tianjiao father." Emperor Qi raised his chin slightly to make himself look more serious. "What do you think of my question just now?" Jiang Wuyo thought for a moment and said, "Which is the foundation of a country with billions of people and millions of cultivators? Make a country like a tall building. The cultivators build it up, and the people build it up. Without height, it's not enough to look down on the world. Without thickness, it's not enough to go through time." She wanted to use a tower as an example. but when the words reached her mouth, she changed it to a building. Therefore, Aken thinks that the people are the foundation of a country, and the cultivators are the backbone of a country. Neither of them can be missing. That's why I, Chi, set up the criminal law and set up the blue metal to arrest and kill those who break the law. Let the people enjoy their work, and let the cultivators flourish. This is the merit of a virtuous rule. Empress, he couldn't help but look at Lin Mingya a few more times after hearing Lin Mingya's powerful words. Emperor Qi smiled. You're my tiger daughter. He then looked at Jiang Wuxia, who was still eating the snow-patterned fruit. Is it delicious? It's lacking some water. Jiang Wuxia smiled. Father, you don't have to ask. Aken will answer it himself. Perhaps it was because of his nature, but he was the most relaxed and carefree among all the princes and princesses. He said with a smile, since historical records, the source of vitality is the qi of life. Without the nourishment of the qi of life, the world cannot produce vitality. In the modern world, the qi of life is the human aura. If the human aura is insufficient, the vitality is insufficient. With the system of a country, the human aura is the source of the official aura. This is the basis of the competition between countries and kidnapping people. He picked up the last snow-patterned fruit and threw it into his mouth. That's why we should put people first. Emperor Qi didn't comment on whether it was good or bad. He only pointed at him and said, prepare another plate of fruits for this guy. It needs to be filled with water. A palace maid came over with a jade plate. The emperor finally looked at Jiang Wuhua and asked faintly, what do you think, Crown Prince? Jiang Wuhua stood up and bowed respectfully. Then he said, my royal brothers and sisters have spoken very well. I have nothing to add. He smiled shyly. I'm very happy that you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.